Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Uncut and After Show. I'm your host Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they premiere, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, thanks button in the info box below the video. Speaking of Patreons, I'm going to do a quick shout out to all of you who do support me on Patreon. So a massive shout out of thanks and appreciation to Flat Earth Sage, Goldie McKinnon, Phoenix Rising 86, Retro Bill, More Books, Cannabear, Fibre Oats, Michael Kahn, Rob H, John Kays, Patrick Gunnels, Banter, Will Brax, Troy Shuker, Hairy Blade, Mobile Max 777, Neo the One, Rob W, Open Minded, Reese Pound, Del West Watson, Maria Nealands, Unbelievable Productions, Blue Ridge Ranger, The Real Gabster, Liam Nedrick Jr., Abraham Mohammed, Adrian Quintana, Skeptic936, Life is Short, Texas Mike, and David Wayne Foster. So another massive thank you to all of you for supporting me on Patreon. Now I will hand over to whoever is in Discord and Google so you can enjoy their dulcet tones while I set up for today's live show.
MC Roofy.
Fill me in. What happened?
Oh, you've listened to them before, haven't you? You know who they are, the two characters. MC, yeah, he's a character. And then Roofy, oh my God, that man's relentless. Yeah. They're not very fun to listen to. Professional ballers.
Okay. Did you get any more details? Can you give us any more info?
Oh,
He's
you
here
know
now.
I'm not very good at that. Yeah. Well, John, he just played it real cool the whole time I listened anyway, like he always does. And then just kept him on point, always coming back to basically to the straight line. It was pretty funny.
Mic check.
Hey Neil, how you doing?
Go.
So how did it go last night? I couldn't find it anywhere.
Oh, you didn't find it? Oh, dang it. I was counting on you to start talking.
It was comedy gold. Like,
Oh, there's
I
John.
was cracked
there we go.
up. Like there was one part where Ruhif was trying to drop a plumb bob to establish vertical, and he said that he didn't need to reference Earth. And I said, so you can just drop a plumb bob up in free space then, right? And that'll give you a vertical. He's like, no, we got to do it on Earth, but we're not referencing Earth.
What? Are you kidding?
No way he said that.
That was funny too. Oh my! It was funny, John. Oh God. Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh no, it's fine. I'm still giggling about it. Like I didn't think. I thought they were liars, but they're just stupid. Like flat out, just not intelligent.
Yeah,
They're not lying.
that's exactly.
But they got to be getting it
that's
from
what we
somewhere. I mean, their thinking has to be coming from somewhere.
Yeah,
did.
Steve.
That's the question. Yeah, that's the question you got to answer.
Can I get a sound check from someone else in Discord, just in case it's just Steve that's low? Now I've turned everything up, which might have been a bad choice.
Hello.
Give us a few lines, Mr. Palmer, just so I can level up Discord.
Did anybody answer it? Can you hear me now, Nathan?
I can hear
Am I
you.
better?
You're just a bit quieter than everyone else, I think, based on the few lines I got out of Mr. Palmer.
Hello, yes. We are almost live with the Flat Earth Debate. Hello.
Fine.
We'll be
Okay.
shortly joined by Nathan Oakley.
Perfect. I think it's just Steve. He's a little bit quiet, which is untypical of Steve. But I'm sure he'll get louder.
He's loud. He's loud to me. Steve is the loudest one to me, but I guess that don't matter.
We're not talking about dress sense or personality here, Neil. Anyway, moving on. So, any noteworthy interactions with the guys? Was it a fair and reasonable and neutral platform?
Obviously, because, I sat silently for, I think, 3 to 5 minutes while Ruhif give his pre-recorded points. And, I sat quietly. And then I was given all of 5 seconds of response before I was interrupted. So, yeah, that was totally reasonable.
Let me get this straight. You sat through a video presentation that was pre-prepared for 5 minutes, and then you got 5 seconds to respond to it before you were interrupted by who?
The moderator.
I'd like to chime in. That was not a 5-minute video. That was more like a 20-plus minute video.
Well, it was so funny that, like, the time
hold on. Before you move on from it, that's a pretty ambiguous detail to... So, did you sit through a 5-minute video to then get immediately interrupted, or did you sit through a 25-minute video to then get immediately interrupted? Which one was it?
It was quite lengthy. I don't know how long it was.
No, it was. He said each speaker has 20 minutes, and then Ruhif said he pre-recorded his. Can you start the recording? So McToon started the recording, and John was quiet throughout the whole recording. Then Ruhif was given a few seconds or a minute or whatever to finish it up once the recorded thing was done. And then McToon says, "All right, John, it's your turn." And then John proceeded, and barely he got into what he said, "Fantastic, you did great." He just commended Ruhif for everything. But then John, of course, went to, well, you had to use a flat plane to do it and a celestial sphere model. And that's when McToon lost it. "No, that wasn't the agreement. You were going to do a fix, blah, blah, blah." He says, "No, I said I concede everything." And McToon was, no, you lied. You lied. You're supposed to do a fix. He says, "No, I concede the fix. It's because you're using a flat earth model to do it, and I'm okay with the fix Ruhif gave." So John just said, I concede. That's perfect. But let's get back to the rules. You use the flat earth to do it. I mean, then, of course, they're ganging up on him. And the definitions were the key because they had total different definitions.
Sorry, before we move on. So let me get it clear. I just want to summarise the series of events. 25-minute video, perhaps, maybe shorter, gets played. You get Ruhif summarising his 20-minute video. Then you commend him on his summary of his 25-minute video and his 25-minute video, concede his points, agree to what he demonstrated in terms of acquiring a fix, and then went on to prove Earth is flat with his own evidence, and you were called a liar and told that that wasn't the agreement, that somehow you have to concede that you're going to point out that he's used a flat plane in order to do what is described. That wasn't tolerated. Did it make it to the audience? From what 10th Man has gleaned from it, I can only assume the answer is yes, because 10th Man heard it in order to convey it to me now. Therefore, they very much got to hear that they had used a flat plane in order to do what they did in their 25-minute video when the moderator interrupted on the neutral platform. Am I correct so far, John?
Yeah,
Well, yes.
So neutral.
John, not Steve. So what happened next, John?
Well, then after that, they went into making the claim that it was so much ridiculousness, and it come at me scattergun, and I defended, like I said I would for quite a while, saying, well, that contradicts the celestial sphere model, and you need straight lines to do that. I stuck to that for a bit, but I don't think they were understanding that. So I tried to break it down further, and they were trying to give an angle without referencing Earth, and that's when he dropped his plumb bob and said that he didn't need to reference Earth to get an angle, but he had to do it on Earth.
So you're saying his plumb bob isn't referencing Earth and isn't using Earth as a reference, but of course it is using Earth as a reference. It's being done on Earth. So this contradictory nonsense that you started off by explaining was kind of where you came in. Was that the main conclusion, or was there more? Before I ask a couple of questions.
I'll comment after John.
Go ahead.
Okay.
It was.
Well, go on, John.
I was just going to say it was just absurdity after absurdity, and it came scattergun. You know, like they weren't holding a cogent thought in their head at any point in time.
Does this surprise you?
Before any comments come,
No.
10th man's first in the queue. So my first question is, you started off by explaining this as though it was you debating Ruhif, which is as I understood it. But in your description, you're saying they presented X, Y, Z. That's slightly confusing. The terminology you're using is confusing to me. Why are you saying they?
Well, I was debating the moderator as well.
Correct.
It's what it, yeah. The moderator was not being a moderator. He was actively engaging in the debate.
But this is their claim to be neutral platform, is it not?
Anything but. Let me comment. It was about a 20-minute video. The 5 minutes, I don't know where that is. Ruhif came on afterwards to give a couple of ending points. So then he turned it over to John, and they were expecting John to work out a celestial fix to the coordinates. John conceded that Ruhif already did an admirable job. There was no need to do that because they had to use a flat earth to do it. And they said, no, you agreed to these terms. Now you're violating the terms. That's when McToon jumped in and got into John's face. And John says, no, because see what they did was they played John, a pre-recorded John on your show saying, oh, I'll debate anybody and, I'll concede to everything, blah, blah, blah. So they played that and then say, okay, well, then we've accepted that. And when John said, I concede, they didn't accept it, even though that was the term John put out initially. Their term was that John does the process. And I even commented on one of your videos, chats, that this was their trick all along, was to get John to go through the process of celestial navigation. And for a fix, when John could kill it right at the beginning by just agreeing with them and say you had to use a flat earth measurement.
So hold on, just want to ask John if that's correct. So John, your terms they played to you that you'd conceded to verbally here, saying I'll concede to whatever they put to me. And when it came to it, after a 25-minute presentation, you agreed with what he put down. You conceded to what he had suggested, but they wouldn't tolerate your concession and said it was unreasonable. Is that an accurate summary, or have I missed something?
Yeah, the thing they couldn't understand is how the celestial sphere model, when you project the ground up onto that model, is how you get the globe. And they were not interested in hearing how they were using a flat plane to get the angles and then a flat earth model to apply the angles in geometry.
So in essence, they weren't interested in hearing your counter-argument then? Essentially, they stopped you putting your counter-argument. It sounds like you could put it across to them anyway when you made the statement that you'll need a flat earth for that. But they wouldn't accept your explanation. They just hand-waved it. It didn't sound like a hand wave. Maybe I'm missing something. You said they wouldn't accept it.
Let me explain.
Well, I want to ask John. You said they wouldn't accept it, John.
Well, they kept asserting that because Ruhif got an almost accurate fix, he was within 11 kilometers, which is excellent. That's an admirable job. I told him it was. Good job. You use flat earth angle measurements on a flat earth model to get a fix. You did great. And, I applauded his efforts. But then they wouldn't accept that was, he had used a flat earth twice. They just
okay. Well, they wouldn't accept it. But I mean, did they explain how they got the elevation angle from a curved baseline? Did they explain how that was possible when obviously you'd explained to them you're acquiring an elevation angle? That's flat Earth required. Well, presumably you said that, right?
That's where it come into the establishing a vertical with a plumb bob that's not referencing Earth, but has to be done on Earth.
Let me fill in the holes.
Hold on. I'm still confused.
Well, no, it's important. It's important.
I'm just asking John. What, his argument for this elevation angle requirement to get the fix was that he's going to drop a plumb bob. Am I right so far? I'm not seeing how that follows. You say he drops a plumb bob.
I'm trying to explain. You got to give me a second. I mean, I listened to the whole show. So John's involved, but I'm listening and I'm picking up things as well. That if you listen, you'll see what I'm saying. John went to Eratosthenes in the shadow. That's when Ruhif went to the plumb bob. So it came off of that. There's a few more other things that took place. Not only did they start off with a recording of John's initial challenge to any baller, and he'll concede everything. He'll even use their model. You can choose the model. They played that. And so, but McToon sent John the rules saying, you have to work this fix. Well, John's initial challenge, which they played, was I'll concede to anything, right? So John's just said, fine, I'm not going to do the fix. I'm speaking for John here because he didn't. I'll just concede to it because they had to use a flat earth measurement to do it. And so John thought he can just do that. And that's what John did. They got super hyper upset that he didn't go through the process. A flat earther can't do celestial navigation. He didn't do the fix. Well, he conceded that you did, but you had to use a flat earth to do it. And they didn't like it.
I see. So in essence, he's saying, no, a flat earther did do it. Ruhif was that flat earther when he used flat earth elevation angle measurements, correct? They didn't like that Ruhif was the flat earther that did the elevation angle measurements off a flat plane and then utilised the celestial sphere model when applying those angles. He didn't like that the flat earther doing it was Ruhif. That's what they didn't like. Is that right, John? John? John's gone.
That's classic, though. The way you summed it up, that is classic.
No, that's what happened, Nathan. They didn't like John's rules about concession and then saying, how'd you do it? It was flat earth. So Ruhif actually was the guy who was the flat earther. He's back.
Did you hear that summary?
That
Did you hear that summary, John? Because there was just one last question, which was to say that Ruhif didn't appreciate the fact that you were essentially saying a flat earther has done it, Ruhif's done it. When Ruhif, the flat earther, used flat earth elevation angle measurements that I concede to because he's done it admirably. They didn't like that he was the flat earther. Ruhif was the flat earther using flat earth elevation angle measurements. They didn't like that, right?
Oh, no, they couldn't stand it. I think it might have broke a cognitive function of their brain or something. I don't know.
Dear.
Oh
dear. You don't like that your angle measurements came from a flat earth, eh, Roofy? Yeah, shocking.
This is why I wanted this to happen so bad.
I've claimed that price long time ago. Once they said they had a fix, I said, welcome to Flat Earth. But I don't think they got it back then.
Yeah, you took the words out of my mouth because I was going to say the exact same thing. Yeah, welcome to Flat Earth, Ruhif.
Well, they resorted to ad homs, called John a liar, said his degrees for his engineering where he lied about it. They trapped him in some kind of weird argument, and John's trying to get clarity of the argument, and they overtalked him, and he could never. Who's talking?
They asked him about something that would have been learned in those fields, so they say, which is calculus and getting an angle off of two curves. Right. So
yeah, but they were using
you can get an angle off a curve, right? And they demonstrated doing so. And how they demonstrated it is they showed two curvy lines. Then they said, okay, what you first have to do is create two straight lines. And then get the angle between the straight lines. And that's how you get an angle between a curve.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly how you do it. You got to use straight lines to get an angle. But I don't know why they were saying that those curved lines were angles.
Well, John, in fairness to them, those curved lines that they had are verified to be curved by direct observation. They do not have that with the Earth. They must assume it curved in the first instance, and then apply the assumption that the straight line is a tangent to a curve. So calculus doesn't apply the way that they thought it did to defeat your premise.
In order to have the fix, you need 3 circles of equal altitude. It's game over.
Hey John, guys, where can you watch that debate? Is it on YouTube anywhere? Is it McToon's channel or what?
I don't
believe
know.
so.
Yeah, it's probably.
Yeah, you just look under comedy. You should be able to find it under comedy, flat Earth comedy or globe Earth comedy. Because that was hilarious.
I've just dropped it into the chat.
I would quite like to see the point where it was put to them that their angle measurements were fine and they came from a flat Earth. I'd like to see the reaction to that.
That was the interruption point. That was one sentence into explaining, the angles required a flat plane. They were applied in a flat plane model. And then I never got to speak a full sentence after that on that neutral platform.
The moment you made a claim that they'd actually done it using angles, straight lines, not curved, they interrupted you and didn't let you speak again. Oh, right. That's so telling. I like it a lot.
Well, they didn't let me speak without interruption. They constantly interrupted me, and, so I just did it right back. I probably shouldn't have, but if I didn't, they would have went into even more nonsense. So I kind of judged the, kind of wrong with somebody actually hearing the truth kind of thing.
At one point, McToon said an angle does not require 2 straight lines. Came right out of his mouth. And John goes, wait a minute, that's the definition of an angle. And then they overtalked him at that point.
I see. Clown show. Is that right, McToon? The very definition of an angle's not an angle when you need an angle to have a straight line bend. Yeah. That's just because you've got a fundamentalist religious zealot belief that angles, 2 straight lines, flat earth baselines, are actually curved lines. They're not.
Oh, I got to go into Eratosthenes with Roofy. I forgot about that part because he was saying that the ground's curving, right? And I said, well, what are we using as the baseline for the Eratosthenes? And he's like, well, the ground. I said, so that's not an angle then, right? He's like, yeah, it's an angle. And it was just like, I was not getting it. He was trying to say that can be flat enough.
So he's asked what the ground is. He says it's curving. He's asked what angle acquisition for baseline is done by Eratosthenes, and he says the ground. So a straight line for an angle. Not appreciating that means it's flat. Yeah, Roofy's thick.
Yeah, I didn't realize how just you could just say something that was obvious, like it would be like holding up a chihuahua and saying dogs don't exist, but he was doing that over and over again. And it's hard not to laugh at somebody when they keep doing that stuff. And so I ended up giggling at him a lot, and I didn't mean to. I felt bad for him.
I mean, the debate show was called Ruhif and Refracted will demonstrate celestial navigation. Pinpointing a fix isn't demonstrating celestial navigation because there's a lot more involved. And obviously that starts with obtaining an elevation angle from the flat baseline.
I thought Roofy done a great job taking flat Earth elevation angles, applying them in a flat Earth model to find his position on a flat Earth. And I told him he did a great job. Like, if I was hiring people 11 kilometers off, I would have given that. You know what I mean?
Yeah, he used a proto-fallacy.
I don't think they understand that the methodology is the problem in their belief structure, right? the act of measuring and all those things, that's where they run into problems. And that's the part that they want to ignore. They just want to say that, well, because I can measure this thing and then I can find my way around on this thing, I can just assert it's whatever I want to, no matter what angles I use or models I use.
I agree.
I can just say it.
I agree. I think the example of the opposite of that, or the, I don't know if it's opposite, but a different circumstance, someone who's not thick, would be Cats, as much as I hate giving him props in this regard. When he made his video about the Isle of Man and said, I'll have to give you a flat earth in this regard, or however he phrased it, that's not verbatim, but he essentially says, we'll need a flat earth for this angle, and I'll give you a flat earth for me to get it. If someone can parrot it off verbatim, I'd be really pleased right about now, but it's not coming, so I won't repeat it a third time badly. But he concedes the flat earth, basically, doesn't he? Now, that's because he's smart enough to understand that. Now, what's his pattern? What's happened to him? Well, he's given up his flat earth established channels and given them to Toon and whoever the other guy is. Sensible. So he's gone on to other things, right? Because if you're smart enough to realise the inevitable reality of what you've got to do in order to perform these functions of measuring angles, you're going to want to distance yourself from this horrible, disturbing arena that this is. And it's only horrible and disturbing to somebody like Cats when they understand it. Cats clearly understood it. He disclaimed it in his video. Now he wants to distance himself from it because he's smart enough to realise the problem. He won't get away from it, but I'm just saying that's the path of the more intelligent person. They realise the inevitable awful truth and go, I'm going to get the hell away from this. I don't like this one bit. I'll just try and forget about it. That would be what Cats has done. Not these guys. They're thick.
That's what I was just going to say. It's a smart move by Cats. Got to give him credit for that.
Smartest move he could make, and more credit to him, because although he won't get away from it, I've said this many times, in the back of his mind it'll always be there. There'll be something that creeps into the conversation from a normie that doesn't even consider this stuff, and it'll spark his memory. Oh yeah, it's flat, isn't it? But it isn't. Right, let's just calm down, let's take a breath. Everything's okay.
Well,
the world is still as it is. The world isn't lying to me. It's all okay.
That's pretty funny.
After the Black Swan, do you remember what I said the best thing a Glober could do if they wanted to remain a Glober was in this debate? Get away from it. Leave and never come back.
Yeah,
if you want to remain a Glober.
That's good advice.
Just deny it to yourself, and when you occasionally remember it, just suppress it. Just suppress it. Like some abusive childhood you'd had. Just suppress it. That makes everything much better. That'll make it better. Suppress the awful truth that it's flat when you figure out that you've got to give us it. Right, Cats? Got to give us it. What, the flat earth that you'll need to make your example? Yeah, you're damn right you'll give it us, because it is. Well, bye-bye, Cats. See you later. Yeah. They're not laughing about it. They're running from it. The awful truth that it's flat.
Well, I tried to talk to Ruhif, or not Ruhif, but McToon about, NASA should really be paying him for preaching the rhetoric for them. And, he didn't understand it. He's like, why would they pay me? I was like, you have a NASA cup in your hand right now. You're shilling for them. Why would they not pay you? Yeah. Maybe you need to look into that.
Because he's a useful idiot. That's why. They don't need to pay him. He's a globe cuck. That's why.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that without getting paid. That's just ridiculous.
I don't know. You just went on someone else's show. You didn't get paid for that. Brian was here. He'd back me up right away. I'd want paying for that.
Well,
that nonsense. You're going to sit through 25... It's basically forcing you to watch a video of theirs for 25 minutes. Could he not have published it and asked you to watch it and you tell him to fuck off? No, you can debate with me, dickhead.
Hold on a sec. That was some of the most... that was some of the best humor I'd heard in a long time. And I got to experience that firsthand.
Plus, they were exposed.
He thinks you need 25 minutes of your live time to watch his video. because he can't cope with what? Presenting publicly on a live debate? That's pathetic, Roofy.
Well, no, I thought it was great. I giggled the entire time. He demonstrated equatorial planes, and then he used, I think he referenced the celestial sphere model. I counted 6, but I think it was a lot more than that.
See if I
6
get away with
times,
that.
and he used
See if I get
angle.
away with that. Well, I'll say this is absolutely a neutral platform, and when the next fundy arrives, I'll say, sit there, don't move, obey these rules and regs about what you're going to try and argue. If you bring up a globe Earth, you'll be shut down within a second, because that's not part of the agreement. You're not going to try and argue for a globe here. The moment you've mentioned the fact that you're going to be needing a globe in some instances of your argument, I'll shut you down immediately. Yeah? Seems reasonable. Now that we've got that all clear, you're going to sit through a 25-minute video before you get to say maybe 5 words. Okay? You sit there, shut up, listen to this 25-minute video on this neutral platform. What an absolute joke.
Yeah, that's why, like, originally I started giggling, because it was like you get 2 sentences out after, sitting through that comedy presentation and you can't address it. Like,
You want that from me, fundies who claim you're going to stick me on a neutral platform to sit through Roofy's shitty video for 25 minutes, only to get 5 words out of making a claim that he needed a flat earth to do it, to get shut down. You damn well pay me for that crap, because that's not a neutral platform. Yeah? You pay me for that shite. That's what that is, because that's nonsense. That's a moderator and some dude making you sit down and watch a video for free. Oh, right. Now you can pay me for that nonsense, dickheads.
Hold on. So they lied then.
For free, I can sit here on my own show and point out that, as John attempted to and got shut down on a neutral platform, Roofy proved the flat earth when he got his fix and utilised a flat plane to get angle measurements, namely elevation angles. Did I get interrupted? Yeah, I did. Got interrupted by Neil, didn't I? Yeah, because that's how it goes. But meanwhile, that's been aired. And I'll get paid for doing this. This is my job. If I go on Roofy's non-neutral, claim-to-be-neutral platform, I'll be forced to sit and watch a 25-minute video that I absolutely wouldn't endure unless you paid me. No. If I actually thought for 1 second that I'd go on the platform and immediately get a fair debate with Roofy, I'd take that up in a second. It'll never happen, as is demonstrated admirably by Mucktoon, who couldn't help himself but join in when he's supposed to be a fair and neutral moderator, in shutting down the guest who's been good enough to sit down for 25 minutes and watch a pre-recorded video rather than debating with the other guest. Were you given an opportunity to make a pre-recorded video to make it fair and neutral, John?
They said I could, or I could just speak, but that I wasn't allowed to just speak.
So you took the opportunity to take 25 minutes of equal, fair, uninterrupted, like he had with the video. You didn't get your 25 minutes of just speaking then? To be fair and neutral and comparable to the video?
I didn't even get 20 seconds.
That's what you guys call neutral? 25 minutes of him sitting down, didn't get an opportunity to talk through the video. Presumably your mic was closed. You didn't get a chance to say, can you just stop the video a second so I can challenge that, as we're not talking on this debate? No, you didn't, did you? You just got played out in an echo chamber without challenge, the entirety of the video. No discussion back and forth, because on a live debate you need to discuss whether or not you're going to play a pre-recorded video on a neutral platform. That's what neutral means. Maybe we can both prepare pre-recorded videos. What next? Is it not enough that you've got 1 million miles of fibre optic cable between you? No, you need to distance it further to make it even more of an echo chamber. Absolutely no interruption for the 25-minute pre-recorded video. Immediate interruption for any challenge that comes towards that video that was uninterrupted on the neutral platform. I'm glad it happened, John. I'm glad you've done it. I'm glad you've endured it. Just so Brian and I's point could be made that much more poignant. Yeah, you won't get me doing that for free. Yeah? You'll have to pay me a pretty penny to endure that shite.
May I speak?
Well, I thought it was...
To be fair,
I thought
you can totally understand why they've done it, because if John did get a chance to present a 25-minute video and talk without being interrupted, it'd be so obviously clear that everybody's using a flat horizontal plane of the Earth to get the elevation angle, and they don't want anybody to know that, do they?
Well, the thing is I was fine with Ruhif's presentation. He got a lot of stuff wrong in it, but the what was necessitated for the fix was there. He had angle measurements from a flat plane. He applied them in the celestial sphere model. If I would have done a presentation, it would have only been redundant at that point. He demonstrated a flat Earth admirably. Now, he confused a lot of it with the globe and tried to talk about a dip angle to a geometric horizon that's been debunked. And I pointed that out to him. But I wasn't even allowed to, there was no debate, though. It was just, I was interrupted. They would make a positive claim and then shout me down. That's all that happened.
John, if you had played the Rob Durham video, the 1 minute Rob Durham video, that would have stood in your favour big time.
Okay, Captain Hindsight.
Yeah, but he didn't listen to
I'm just
QE.
saying. No, because it's only 1 minute. The 1 minute. Just that 1 minute video.
I tried to play it.
I tried to play
it. I had no control over that.
And did you ask him send it to him and ask him to play it? Because that 1 minute video would have actually absolutely, because you basically were saying what that 1 minute video states, and that would have, all you would have needed is that 1 minute video.
They wouldn't allow
it. That would have helped you a lot there in that situation, because they weren't going to see. There was no way you were going to be able to just debate with it. You were going to be debating him and McToon and everyone else.
They wouldn't put up an image of the celestial sphere. Do you think they're going to play a video at that point?
So I was just going to say, they weren't going to play that, John. No way.
Yeah, well, if they wouldn't put, I would definitely, I didn't know they wouldn't put it up. I was wondering why they wouldn't, that image didn't show up. So that's really, really, really low that they wouldn't show that, even show that much.
Yeah, it shows the truth, and they don't want to know the truth.
Go on, John.
Like, they were wanting me to go and find it while they made all sorts of crazy claims while I was gone. I said, just show it. You know, you have it at hand, put it up on the screen. And they were wanting, I guess, me to do it while they said crazy things, you know? And I was just like, you're using a flat plane model. How ignorant can you be at this point? Because it has to be ignorance. I don't think they're liars anymore. Or if I ever thought they were liars, I know they're not now. It's just blind stupidity.
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon and crypto link in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the discussion and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and Twitter. Now, we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Refracted Curvature, Eli, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in Discord, so welcome one and all.
Yeah, how's it going?
Hey, good afternoon.
Good to be here.
Good morning.
Good morning. Good to have you all. I hate to follow off straight after the pre-show with a discussion that doesn't involve the audience knowing what's being discussed, but hopefully you're going to pick this up as it goes along, and it's not just some in-joke, so it's worth it, audience. I know you've only just joined us live. Just after the end of the pre-show, John, I just want to clarify something you said. I asked earlier if you had been given the opportunity to play a 25-minute video in yesterday's debate, and now I'm under the impression that you did want to play a video, but you weren't allowed to. Is that correct? Or precluded from doing so, shall we say?
Well, initially it was meant to be that we were allotted times, and Ruhif chose to fill his with the video, which is fine. I wasn't complaining about that. But when it come time for me to speak, I got like 2 sentences in, and I think cognitively they broke, and they wouldn't allow me to speak anymore. So it didn't matter what I did after that. As far as showing pictures, I had to resort to taking my camera out and turning my camera phone on to be able to show them that, you need straight lines for angles. I think it wasn't as much that they knew what they were doing. It was just like a reaction to something that they didn't like. You know what I mean?
I do, but to answer my question, did you ask if you could play the Rob Durham 1-minute video?
No, because they wouldn't put up the celestial sphere model on screen. I didn't even bother pointing out that, there's a video that demonstrates this. Like, at that point, they weren't interested.
Okay, when you say demonstrates this, what is this?
Well, that you can't get an angle when one of the lines is curved, that you need 2 straight lines to get an angle. And when you're talking about elevation angles, Earth can't be a sphere to get an elevation angle.
Perfect. So that's my cue to play Rob Durham's video, which I'm going to do now, if I can get it to look reasonable. I can't because it's on a shorts. I'll come back to this momentarily with a slightly different version of that video. Okay, so for the audience's benefit, just to get you up to speed before I do that, John went on McToon's channel to debate the nature of Earth. In essence, we're talking flat Earth versus globe Earth. Now, there was lots of rules and regulations in terms of establishing a fix for some reason, and once that was done, admirably so, by the flat earther known as Ruhif, with flat Earth elevation angles, it was pointed out to him that he had used flat Earth elevation angles, and that's the sentence that John had in lieu of a 25-minute comparative presentation to compare to the pre-recorded video that he had to sit through, made by Ruhif, followed by a summary by Ruhif verbally. So that's the situation. You need elevation angle measurements taken from a flat plane. Ruhif followed the process admirably, acquired the elevation angle measurements from a flat plane, but didn't like having it pointed out that he was in fact the flat earther that had done this. Is there anything else in summary to add to that, John? Or is that it?
Well, as far as his understanding of what dip angle is, he was asserting that he was drawing a straight line to a geometric tangent point. And then he said that line can also be curved.
Sorry, tangents are a straight line, though.
Correct.
So does Ruhif not understand what a tangent is?
I don't think Ruhif understands what geometry is. I don't think he could pass like 6th grade geometry if he had to.
But my question was, does he know what a tangent is? Because it seems like he's saying a tangent can be bent. Is he an idiot?
Yes, that's the only explanation. I don't think he's a liar. I think he's just moronic.
That's a compliment.
They didn't have any hesitation calling you a liar about the degrees you studied hard and earned. They mocked you at the end. It got really ridiculous. I finally went off. I just rewound the video at 5 minutes, 30 seconds.
Hold on, before you start confusing me with stuff. No, just let me play this section of Rob Durham.
Possible?
Okay, to briefly touch on what the guys over at Flat Earth Debate have been saying, we're going to use the exact same examples of the GP positions here. I'm going to look at it from an orthographic view. Okay, if we're standing here on the Earth, this is the angle to the celestial body. Let's take a line from our position, representing the horizon. The angle formed here is definitely not 90 degrees. And even at the position where it meets the Earth, you can't have a 90-degree angle to a curved surface. And AutoCAD will actually verify this, because if I choose the angular dimension command, pick this line and this line, it will give me an angle between them. If I try to pick this line and this arc, it says here, object selected is not a line. It will just not give me an angle. And why would it? How could it? The angle will be different at every single point on that arc.
Sorry to snap your 10th. Right, what was it you wanted me to do?
Nothing.
That's when you drop the mic.
No, I wanted to say that I rewound the video from the show, the recording that John was on with McToon and Ruhif. And the video started playing at 5 minutes, 30 seconds into the show that Ruhif pre-recorded rather than do it live, which was okay. And it ended at 27 minutes, 24 seconds. Subtract the two. So for 21 minutes or so, it was just a video. And then they offered John after that, which then they rumpused him from the beginning.
Okay, sounds very neutral.
Neutral platform.
Very neutral, very neutral. Is there anything we need to summarise? Because I'm sure that's probably what the regulars wanted us to do immediately at the start of this live show, just discuss the events of that discussion. Because it wasn't a debate.
Well, I'd like to summarise.
Go
on. They used a recording of me on your show even. Here's 10th Man saying, and then they played a clip of me saying that The Practical Navigator by Bowditch is like the Bible of navigation. Every sailor has one. And they commended me for it. And they actually used me saying that, and that I bought 4 different copies at different dates just to see if any changes were made or additions. Okay, because I like to do full research from newer copies versus the older copies. Then he took an excerpt out of it, not the one I was showing on your show. Now, the reason I want to draw attention to that is because I've said from the beginning, and this will answer the question of John saying, I don't think they're liars, I think they're confused. In celestial navigation books, whether it's Bowditch or all the others, they pre-assume a globe. So everything has to work off of that curved surface. So there's a lot of nonsense in there. But at the same time, they can't help but put some good stuff in there. And when I started looking at them initially, I saw all the good stuff with begging the question globe inserted. And I said, well, how in the world does an angle work off a curved surface? So when someone says, 10th Man recommends Bowditch, I recommend in what sense? I said, this is their main source, and in here is full of contradictions. Let me show you a few. They didn't play the contradiction that I showed on your show. They just went to an excerpt they wanted to pick up from the book that validated the globe, which of course all of them do. They all are globe books. They draw circles on their attention plane, make that circle the globe, et cetera, et cetera. But it's the nuances that you look for. Like, for example, where are the angles being measured from? In the tables. Not the guy with the sextant on the surface. In the tables, the angles are measured from the center of a circle. Now, what is so precious about the center of a circle? Is there a curve there? Can anyone answer me this? Is there a curve at the center of a circle?
No.
No.
No, but there is an origin for a vertex of 2 lines to meet. Nathan, go to Master B. I've got it up there. I don't know if you see the first one, which is a written portion.
Yep, off you go.
Okay. Altitude. The true horizon is a plane tangent to the Earth's surface at the observer's position. The visible horizon is the horizon line seen by the observer's eye. The celestial horizon is a plane through the center of the Earth. Center of the celestial sphere, it extends to it. Parallel to the observer's true horizon, extended to meet the celestial sphere as a primary great circle of reference. The altitude of a body projected onto the celestial sphere is a vertical angular distance in degrees of its center above the celestial horizon. As the observer cannot make this measurement from the center of the Earth, celestial sphere, nor see his imaginary celestial horizon, the altitude is taken by a sextant using his visible horizon as a reference and transferred to the center of a celestial sphere and the celestial horizon by suitable corrections. Go to the first image following this. So you're at the top of this circle and your observer eye is above the sea surface, and they call that
Hold on, which image?
The one following the writing.
There wasn't any following the text. That's the last image.
Really? Well, I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 images. Nothing?
Posted it twice. Let me just see if I can zip through to the... Is it the blue Earth?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what you want to be on now.
Yeah, okay. Correct. So you see 3 parallel lines. Okay, where's all the tables tabulating elevation angles that the books, you got to match with the books? At the center of the circle, which they reify into a globe. We have to match everything to that. What is that? Do you see a curve there? No, you see 2 lines and the circle's sectioned off into 4 90s. Okay, so this is why you got a minus from 90. It's pretty obvious. If you look at the right side of the circle and say the sun is rising at the highest point, it's over your zenith, and then as it goes down, it's setting. And so now you see how they're having to minus from 90, because the highest point ever of a luminary will be 90 above you, same zenith. The geoidal horizon is a tangent point touching a circle. So that's where the eye comes down from the dip correction and gets on the water. The sensible horizon is a theoretical horizon at the eye level of the observer with the sextant on the boat before he makes dip correction. So if you were on land, that could be achieved by theodolite or a bubble sextant or something else, theodolite with a plumb bob, leveling device as well. You can have a horizontal at your eye level and it's perpendicular. But when you're in the sea and you got to use the horizon, the earth, you have to make dip correction, get your eyeball on the water. And then see, they got this thing now all the way matching where the tables derive from, the center of the earth. Next slide. On this one, you see what's happening. They got the earth and you've got the celestial sphere around the earth and all the stars stuck to it on the inner concave portion of it, and they match everything, parallel and longitude and latitude lines match everything. Okay, and you can see the celestial equators matching the Earth's equator and the ships on top. Then you look to the left and you say, what's that? Well, that's the altitude azimuth horizontal coordinate system there on the left. That's how we do things. But that is their center. That is the center of the earth right there for them. And that's where the measurement has to come from. So really, it's a flat plane that we're always doing it on, because what's the center of the earth? There's no curve there. There's a 90, and this is the equatorial plane. Next slide. So in all actuality, here's the center of the earth. Zenith angle. And then now draw an arc, and they put you on the surface. They project you on the surface of the arc of the protractor. But you've got to match everything to this center table. Everything has to be done. That's why you go through the calculations. Next slide. So you can sit here in this imagery, you've got a circle representing a sphere, and the true angle is from the center, but the observer needs that tangent plane on top in order to match it. Guys, your tables in the book have to match that center. You're on a curved surface, it can't, so you're forced to draw a parallel line to a flat, to make a flat so you can get an angle and then transpose it. That's all that's happening here. That's it.
I have something to say in a second.
Okay, seconds up. Go.
Yeah, I'm going to say, John says that Roofy is not a liar. Now, I'm going to point out that how he is a liar and how he is dishonest. Roofy said, this is some of Roofy's quotes, that I can't remember exactly how he phrased this one, but he said, the celestial sphere model is a globe. That's basically what he said. Not exactly how he phrased it, but he said it the same thing. Said that same thing several different times in about 4 different ways, something like that. But he also claimed that an elevation angle doesn't need 2 lines, right? And he also claimed that an elevation angle doesn't eventually become a right angle triangle, which it does. And then he shows 2 angles, one from the surface of his sphere, but he has he's using a tangent plane, but he has it in a serrated yellow line. This tangent plane he made, right? And then he's showing that same exact angle, which involves 2 lines, and he brings it down to the center of his globe, which involves 2 lines. I think it was Divergent Droid and me were both saying in the comments. He's saying that like the right angle triangles aren't used, and he's saying the elevation angles only have 1 line, and then he's showing 2 elevation angles with 2 lines each. He's an absolute total and utter liar, and so is McNeil.
So he's on to summarise, on the one hand he's saying you don't need 2 straight lines to form an angle, then he takes an elevation angle that in reality was taken from the surface with a flat baseline, and then transposes that angle, which he said you don't need and wouldn't be 2 straight lines, down to the centre of a presupposed spherical Earth, which is actually the centre of the celestial sphere model, but represents the same 2 straight lines with an angle at the centre. In other words, he's saying he doesn't need an angle. Angles aren't 2 straight lines. Here's my use of an angle from the surface, acquired from a flat baseline, transposed down to the centre as an angle, 2 straight lines. Wow.
It's just like the container story.
Hold on.
He actually said that you didn't need 2 lines. He didn't even say straight. You didn't need 2 lines for an elevation angle.
I think you have like a very high estimation of Ruhif's intelligence, and you're ascribing malice to ignorance. But so he should take that as a compliment, though.
It's not ignorance, John. It's not ignorance, John, when you're showing the complete opposite from what you're claiming. And you're trying to hide your tangent plane with a little off-yellow serrated line, just like Mick West did with his Metabunk. I'm sorry, I have to completely disagree with you.
I'm with Brian.
No, that's just stupidity. Like, they think there's a justification for it. They don't know what it is. They just have to argue with me. They don't have to figure this out. I have to be wrong because they know the Earth's a sphere. It's just.
I'll agree with John. I think John's more right than you, Brian. As much as you can read deception into them cognitively drawing out the baseline, because they've heard our argument, so at a surface level they must have processed it to a certain degree. But what John's described is more accurate. Well, we can't be wrong. I mean, I'll put a wiggly line here just in case, so they don't focus on it. But that's about the length of their malice. As opposed to your description of them going, this is where they lose the argument, therefore I've got to put this wiggly line in so that they don't focus on it, because if they do, I lose the argument, so I've got to lie here. I don't think there's any malice or forethought in they've got a cursory consideration to it, but as John says, ultimately they know they're right. They're on a globe and they know, and everyone knows around them, so they can rest on their laurels, confident in their dogged assurance that they're on a globe, until that cognitive pain and the put to the back of their mind because, I'll draw a wiggly line, gets pointed out to them. Now, when John points out to them, well, yeah, he's done an admirable job of getting flat Earth elevation angle measurements, they cognitively couldn't bear it and had to interrupt him. So they've just suppressed it as opposed to used it knowingly with malice.
Hang on.
I agree. Hold on. I agree with you also, John and Nathan, specifically because when I also think about how they have casual conversations when none of us are around, like, I mean, people in general, like when this is not, when they're not debating us and they're just speaking casually, like they definitely aren't, they're not lying then. Like they really believe it. Like, so I think that what's going on is exactly how John and Nathan described it. It's more accurate to that.
Good point, Eli. I never looked at it like that.
Except Brian,
hold on, before you throw a third point in, just let Brian just address it because it is him with.
Oh my gosh, I was waiting. Eli came in my position.
I know. Well, Eli's just rude, but Brian can address what we've said. Go ahead, Brian, and then 10th.
I did not do that.
You're just rude.
I
just
interrupted Nathan twice.
Well, I'm going to be rude now to all of you by shouting out Douglas Kirkwood for joining as a penguin and also Godzilla for essentially wasting his free member chat by saying, "Hooray, free member chat!" that's why he boasted with his free chat that he gets each month for being a member. So thank you, Godzilla, for the super chat, and thank you very much, Douglas, for joining as a member. Brian, please feel free to respond as we disagreed with you specifically, John and I.
Yeah, Roofy intentionally used a serrated yellow line as his tangent plane to take the focus away from him having to use the tangent plane. So that I can't call that ignorance.
No, but did you hear what Eli said?
He made some statements that were completely the opposite from what he went on had to show. Really, if I've dealt with him over the years, he's not stupid.
Hold on. What you've just described isn't deceit. It's cognitive dissonance. You realise that, right? You've just assessed him and given a description of cognitive dissonance as opposed to a description of deceit.
Well, I have to take into account that he used a serrated yellow line. To use a serrated yellow line in place of what should have been one straight white or red line or whatever tells me that he had to actually think about that.
But he also told you that you didn't need... Did he not also tell you that you didn't need two lines? Correct? That is what he stated, according to you guys. I haven't watched, but I'll take you at your word.
Say you don't need. He said you didn't need. An elevation angle doesn't need two lines.
Okay, and then he used them with a wiggly line. So that is actually, as opposed to what you're describing as deceit, that's his massage. The wiggle is the massage for his cognitive dissonance, I would argue.
Listen, you can see it any way you like. I'm going to stick with he's a liar. He's dishonest.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to stick with.
Who is it that said don't ascribe to malice that could be easier described as stupidity?
Yeah, but I agree with what Eli said.
Hamlin's razor. It's Hamlin's razor, right?
Yeah. That's true in some circumstances, but with real life, I don't think so.
Eli, they're ignoring you.
Can I say something?
No.
10th can. You can next.
My goodness. By the way, Eli, when I spoke on my end, you came in after me, but I don't know the delay. It may have been the other way, so that's how I took it.
Perfect. Thank you for that, 10th. Go ahead, Arwin.
Okay, thanks, Nathan.
Right. Hello. Hi.
I was just joking, by the way, Arwin. Arwin, that was a joke. You're just not keeping up. Go ahead, 10th.
Oh.
All right. Well, let's get objective instead of subjective. I just showed you pictures that are drawn everywhere in celestial navigation, that everything's got to match that right angle from the center of the Earth where there's no curve. So if he doesn't draw a tangent plane on top, how could he do that? He has to. We just saw it. Now, the word elevation angle or altitude measurement, if you look at the definition of that word, and Nathan, I'll use the one you have, the altitude angle, sometimes referred to as the solar elevation angle, describes how high the sun appears in the sky. The angle is measured between an imaginary line between the observer and the sun and the horizontal plane the observer is standing on. Okay, they see that. They know what an elevation angle is. And they say, no, you don't need two straight lines or a baseline for an elevation angle. You can just do it in the air. You don't need to use the earth. It does. See, I can get a horizontal in my eye line. It's the theoretical horizon. I can do it with a plumb bob, a bubble sextant. Yeah. But with the Mariner sextant, we're using the horizon. So how do you adjust for that to match the description of an elevation angle? And this is where they're lying, because they could read the definition. They could see the parallel lines. This is where Brian is right. Unless you're telling me McToon and Ruif don't know how to read the definition.
Definitions are meaningless.
No, but
Yeah,
it
that
has
was the
to be a
quote.
sphere.
Hold on, we'll start off with John, but
Can I
Owen's got
have?
to. He's in the queue. Let's hear that quote
Right.
again, and then I'm going to shout out Goldie. Go ahead, John.
Definitions are meaningless, 10th.
Shout out to Goldie McKinnon for joining us, Penguin. Go ahead, Arwin.
Right. So I think I wanted to basically try to divine whether they are lying or not lying. How is that working for them? I think that the anti-flat earthers have assimilated a compartmentalized ability for themselves where they can basically lie and then immediately hide for themselves that they lied.
That's cognitive
That's what I
dissonance.
think they can
It's
do.
not
and
lying.
I think they use it all the time now, which makes them
You're doing
seem
it too now.
extremely-
It's frustrating.
I'm
You
not
just
done yet.
because you're doing what Brian's doing. It's cognitive dissonance. If you're holding two positions simultaneously, that's cognitive dissonance, not deceit.
Yeah, thanks. I was trying to explain that.
My bad.
Never mind.
Sorry, Arwin. My bad.
Hey. Yeah, fair. So we do have a counterexample of this from the globe side toward us, which is Danny Faulkner, where he writes in his blogs that flat earthers are generally liars because they promulgate information that has errors. So he's basically saying if you have erroneous information, you're necessarily dishonest, liar, deceitful, all these negative moral characteristics, which isn't correct. That's fallacious reasoning.
The stereotyping fallacy.
Look, my main point was really...
Go on, Arwin. Sorry.
Shouldn't be, we're not the liars. You guys are the liars.
Yeah,
I'm
but
going to
that's
bring this
just
back home
childish
in a minute.
projection, really. But my main point is that they do shine through continually, but in very short moments, in snippets. Like you can even see it in their eyes, where they do realize that they are lying, but then they just very quickly forget about it. It's like they industrialize the cognitive dissonance. But it's not the natural cognitive dissonance, you see. A natural cognitive dissonance, you can't snap out of it and you won't lie. Because that, if you will consciously lie, it can't technically be cognitive dissonance. Cognitive dissonance is a natural process where you just can't snap out of it because you truly believe in something even though you can't cognitively figure it out.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
These guys are different. They weaponize
that is
it
cognitive
and they
dissonance,
lie
though.
and then forget quickly.
Yeah, but that is cognitive dissonance. You're admirably describing what cognitive dissonance is. Now, you can call it lying to yourself. When you verbalise it, you could call it lying to others. It isn't. Because they haven't intentionally decided to deceive you with malice. They genuinely believe when they state that you don't need two straight lines or two lines to make an angle, and then move on to a completely contrasting, contradictory point where they use two lines. That is cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, but that part is cognitive.
This is why.
Dissonance, but I'm just trying. Hold on. I was just trying to say they do actually know they're lying at times, and typically cognitive dissonant people don't. They don't see it. They consciously know it and then forget about it quickly. It's different. It's not the natural cognitive dissonance.
Yeah, but you're just saying that they're lying.
But
unless you can demonstrate malice.
Wait, can I before?
Go on, Eli.
This is the problem. This is why epistemology is important, because AI addressed it properly, and it's what John and Nathan have been trying to highlight as well. Because when we consider them doing it, we understand they're illogically coming to those conclusions. But when it's them, we're happy to say, it's deception. No, it's cognitive dissonance.
But I disagree because cognitive dissonance has an element of innocence to it, and they do not.
it's a straightforward conflict, internal conflict. Whereas Nathan's something where you end up having to lie to yourself. So you will ignore certain specific facts that don't sit with your worldview. Even though you know them, and you focus and put much more emphasis on, say for example, you bought a pair of shoes from the shop, right? You went down the street, and at the next shop, exactly the same pair of shoes, half the price. But what you do is you tell yourself, no, but I trust that other shop where I bought them from, so I'm happy to pay more because I'm actually getting a better product because they've got a better returns policy. So you make things up to justify past the most obvious glaring contradiction in your worldview, that the shoes were bloody cheaper, you idiot. Yeah, that's dissonance, where you just argue amongst yourself. You just convince yourself. You may verbalize that to others, but importantly, it's an internal process.
Right. But that's still, you're still thinking you're doing the right thing, right?
No.
Yeah.
Well, these guys, my point is that these anti-flat earthers, they literally are consciously lying to us. They're trying to deceive us. They're trying to strategize against us in a consciously deceptive way. And they, on top of that, also cognitive dissonance themselves.
God, this is driving me nuts. As evidenced by
how they literally consciously don't answer questions when they could, just to basically throw everything off, to derail us, to sabotage. They systematically do it.
We could get into a discussion about this, about whether or not they're embracing cognitive dissonance or just outright bald-faced liars. We could carry on this discussion indefinitely. However, I think that is actually beneficial to them, because they are but one man, but two men. It wasn't a fair debate by the sounds of things, but two men, as much as that doesn't make sense. Let's just individualise it. MC Toon is but one man. Ruhif is but one man. And they can throw themselves on the flames in this regard, because it doesn't matter when it comes to the overriding Western worldview that the world is a spherical surface and the elevation angle measurements don't lead to lines because our line's curved or something like that. They don't mind contradicting themselves because there's plenty more to replace them, right? But in their own way, they're just putting an argument for a globe and receiving one back that defies it. And we, personally, I think, if you'll all agree, I hope, should just focus on the argument that they lost or won on. Now, if they won, then that's wonderful. We'd obviously be hanging our heads in shame like we did with the Isle of Man when we were begging the question. But in this regard, you go, okay, what's the win, what's the loss? They presented an eloquent demonstration of acquiring flat Earth elevation angle measurements to acquire a fix, if I'm not mistaken in what I heard. And then they were commended for their use of a flat Earth to acquire elevation angle measurements to acquire a fix. And it was conceded that he'd done a pretty good job within 11K or something similar from what I heard. Excellent job of using a flat Earth there, Ruhif. But apparently when that was pointed out that they had used the flat Earth to do it, they didn't like it. Well, now I've summarised that in one breath they didn't like it, so I've dropped it in there for you guys to keep you happy. But ultimately, they proved a flat Earth when they took an elevation angle measurement from the flat baseline that we dwell atop.
What actually happened is, within the whole thing, is McToon and Ruhif hijacked John's challenge. John's challenge was that he would have conceded to everything they want him to concede to, and his whole defense is only going to be the celestial sphere model, basically. And that may not be verbatim, John, so John can correct me in a minute. But they took that challenge and hijacked it and turned it into a completely different challenge. Ruhif took up John's challenge after other people failed to take it up. And other people argued with John about the challenge. So John had that challenge out there for weeks and weeks and weeks without anyone taking him up on it. Ruhif took him up on it and then changed the challenge around completely, and then claimed that when John went to speak, when Ruhif's presentation was over, presentation video, that he was in violation of the challenge. John never stated publicly that he was ever going to get involved in the challenge that MC2 was claiming was happening. John was the originator of
sorry to interrupt you. Am I right in my understanding that what was twisted from the neutral, fair moderator's platform being used to host this discussion, the discussion was actually twisted from John's offer to concede whatever they like and point out that they'll need a flat plane to do it, into taking the moderator's challenge. Am I correct in this, John, that you were actually expected during the discussions and back and forth to be taking the moderator, that's MC Toon's challenge, so the fair and reasonable moderator and his challenge while he moderated you two? Is that correct? Sounds so neutral.
Yes, sir. Well, yes, sir. But then I turned it on its head, and I just let the flat earther known as Roofy show the evidence for the flat plane, and then I used his example to show how he proved it was a flat plane.
Yeah, but the point is I'm making, John, is that MC Toon was trying to stop you from talking under the guise that you were not in line with his challenge that you supposedly agreed to.
The moderator's challenge. The moderator, yes. The one there to keep things even. It wasn't reasonable that you weren't conforming to the moderator's challenge on this neutral platform.
Yeah.
This is epic.
Not true.
You dicks ever want to confront me about going on a neutral platform, I'll throw this in your face. You unbelievable idiots.
Which is not true either, because Roofy used a flat Earth angle measurements and a flat Earth celestial sphere model to illustrate why it's a flat Earth. So I didn't need to do what they thought I needed to do. They did it for me. And I just pointed that out.
No, John, you're missing it.
He's not missing it. No. He hasn't missed what we've said, Brian, and I know you've picked it up and reiterated it enough for the audience to get it, and I thank you for that. But John is sort of sidebarring that. He's not agreeing with us. He's saying, but overall, back to the point I said earlier, when it's whether or not they're lying, you won the argument by pointing out that the flat earther known as Roofy had done an admirable job of acquiring elevation angle measurements from a flat earth to find his fix. You told him what a great job he did of using a flat earth, didn't you, John? This is the main point, Brian. You will come back to that, I promise.
Yeah, and that's the point I really wanted. I don't think they picked up on that, or they may have at some level, but I don't think it was like cognitively registering for them. They thought that because I didn't do it myself, that it hadn't been done for me. It's just my opponent did it for me. And that's what I highlighted.
They just didn't get it.
Let me be a bit more clear. Roofy accepted John's challenge that no one else would accept. And then John agreed to John agreed to do it, the debate, on MC Toon's. At which point, MC Toon and Roofy completely changed the challenge around and told their audience and the whole world that would listen that John agreed to their challenge, which is not the truth. John never agreed to do any of that nonsense. It was John's challenge that Roofy accepted, not John accepting McToon's challenge. That never happened. So when John went to speak after Roofy's video was over.
I've foreseen that, Brian, because we did discuss it prior. And I said, yeah, go ahead. I did. I was fine with that.
You didn't agree to their challenge, did you? You didn't agree to...
No, I did. Because I did, Brian, because Roofy did it for me. I didn't have to do it.
Yeah, but if you agreed to their challenge, then you forfeited their challenge. That's the truth.
Right.
Regardless of how correct you might be in what you're saying. If you agreed to do it...
No, I didn't.
No. Let me interrupt both because you're talking over each other. Stop a second.
I have to get some
Brian, please. What he's saying is, he didn't concede the challenge. He commended Roofy on performing a flat Earth elevation angle measurement to do it. And that was good enough, wasn't it, John? That was good enough. He did it, and you're happy with what he did on a flat Earth, correct?
Right, and I maintained my original challenge where I would concede everything, and I did that. But he still required a flat plane to do it, and that's what I wanted to stick to. I didn't.
Yeah, but I need
knew
to get
what they were trying to do. I knew what they were trying to do, Brian. So I let them think that that's what they were getting away with. And
yeah, but John, did you agree to do Did you agree to do a fix using the angles they gave you? Did you agree to that?
I agreed that a flat earther would get a fix.
That's not what I'm asking you. I'm asking
No,
you,
no.
did you agree?
Look, right. We're talking about dealing with weasels, Brian. And John's trying to explain to you how he dealt with the weasels, and you're saying no. Just let him tell you how he dealt with the weasels, please.
Right. The flat earther known as Roofy, who doesn't believe it's a flat earth, done my job for me. And I just illustrated that. Now, they didn't want me to illustrate it. It drove them crazy, me pointing that out. That's why they didn't allow me to speak. But why would I need to do the challenge if he's already done it for me and proven a flat earth?
It's not whether you... I didn't ask you whether you needed to do it. I'm asking you whether you had agreed to do it. Because if you agreed and you didn't do it, even if you just reran what Roofy did, just reran his video again, the point is that if you didn't do it and you agreed to do it, then they can call you a liar because you are being dishonest.
Correct. So the way that they angled it is that Brian needs to demonstrate doing the math after he's given the angles and use the math to come to a conclusion. He didn't do that at any point in time. Therefore, from their point of view, he forfeited.
Yeah, if you agreed to do that, John, I'm not getting a yes or no out of you whether you agreed to do the fix or not. You're telling me something.
I did not say that I was going to sit down and do the math. I said
you didn't agree to do the fix.
Brian, he's telling you what he did say, and you're interrupting him, so I can't hear what he did actually say. Just let him tell you.
Hold on, I'll dig it out because I knew this was coming up. I knew why they were doing it. And I knew that Roofy was going to use a flat plane, so I specifically worded how I responded to them to put them back in line with the challenge that I put out.
Perfect. So you say you're going to look it up. It sounds like we're going to get a verbatim response that John gave, where he was claimed to be a liar, which I also picked up. Someone put down this earlier. Although I haven't watched this show, I've been filled in. I've had a précis, so to speak, of what occurred, which you've enjoyed along with me because you had most of it while we've been live, but I'm just basically buying time for John to dig out the response so that he can point out, no, I carefully phrased my response to you weasels who have taken me saying I'll concede anything you like and point out that you need flat earth elevation angle measurements and a celestial sphere. And if you attempt to twist it into something else, I'll respond and be just as weaselly back in my twisted response in your attempts to twist this into being the moderator's challenge on the neutral platform. Hopefully I've brought
Excellent job, John. That was crafty.
Hold on, he's not finished. Have you managed to dig it out, John?
No. Just while you're filling, just to add to that, we discussed it on Monday because the challenge link was sent to me and I pulled it up on screen and went through it. And as I said to John, my understanding was you're not going to do any of this because they're already going to do it for you when they acquire their angle, which is the bit they want to move past. So I'm confused that there was ever any expectation. It was quite categorically stated on here that wasn't happening on Monday. Do you know what I mean? Because we went through that and he said, no, I'm not doing that. That's not what I'm going for. So, and that'll be second.
This is the response. This is the response. I'll post it too, but this is the response I gave to Roofy on June 29th at 11:35. He laid down the challenge, and I said, so we're going to use flat Earth angle measurements within the celestial sphere model of a flat Earth to prove a sphere, ? Do whatever, but I won't be wasting my time arguing past the point of concession. End quote.
So your response was, I won't be arguing past the point of concession. So once it's established, as detailed by John and done by the flat earther known as Roofy, as detailed by John in his response. So when they called you a liar, outrageous. No, do whatever you like. And you did. 25-minute pre-recorded video. That's what you wanted to do. And then it was pointed out that you used a flat earth to do it.
Yeah, that was a concession.
Just let me get a response from... I know it's you that said it, John, but is that satisfactory, Brian?
What? I still didn't get a straight... Like, I asked if John agreed to do their challenge, and he didn't give me a straight yes or no. So if he gave him the impression he was going to do their challenge, I don't know.
There's no impression there. That was categorically clear, his response. He won't be arguing past the point of concession. Do whatever you want, but once we get to the point of concession, there's no point progressing past there, and the point of concession is where you get your angle from, so.
Oh, but nobody's done it so far. Props, John. Your tolerance level is a lot higher than I have got for this sort of nonsense, because unless you're going to pay me to sit through a 25-minute Roofy video, which I absolutely wouldn't do otherwise, you wouldn't have me there because of this kind of nonsense. Neutral platform with you supposed to be fulfilling the bloody moderator's challenge? This kind of nonsense isn't for me. No, thanks, lads. No, that's not neutral, you stupid idiots.
Well, they assume they have a trap.
My response. Right. I copied and pasted my response in Master B. If anybody wants to look at it, I'll try to take some. When I'm using my phone to talk on Skype, I'll try to take some screenshots of what was actually said.
Okay, so I've got it up on screen. You've cut it and pasted it. I'll just repeat it verbatim. So we are going to use flat Earth angle measurement within the celestial sphere model of a flat Earth to prove a sphere, ? Do whatever. But I won't be wasting my time arguing past the point of concession. That doesn't sound like you saying you're going to fulfill McToon, the moderator's challenge. No, that sounds like you do whatever you need to do, individual one, not you and Toon, the moderator, and his challenge. This is to Ruhif, right? Please, God, be to Ruhif.
Yeah, yes, sir. That was
perfect. Yeah. So between you and the person you're supposed to be debating who actually presented a 25-minute video, because that's what he's gonna do, end quote, isn't you saying you're going to fulfill his, that's the moderator's, challenge in order to debate when you've said you'll concede whatever they like, as you did, and then point out that they'll need a flat Earth to do it, as you did. So you kept your end of the bargain and did precisely as you said you would. Kudos, as nobody said it so far. Good job. Well done.
Right, and it was kind of difficult to maintain that ambiguity because they were wanting to draw me into the false dichotomy of a flat Earth celestial sphere versus some other flat Earth model, and then a globe wins out. So it was hard because I knew what I was doing, I knew what they were trying to do, and I was just trying to maintain the fine line where they thought I was going to do that, but I never said I would.
Well, John. Is there a reply to that statement that Nathan just read that they sent you? Because if they said, yes, that's what we're going to do, then that means that they conceded that the celestial sphere model is based on a flat Earth in the first instance.
It seems unlikely, but
just proving that.
It seems unlikely, but did you get a reply saying, yeah, that's what we're going to do. We'll be using a flat Earth elevation angle measurement, because they will. And they did. And he was welcome to flat Earth, John. Probably not.
No, he ignored what I said. They only hear what they want to hear.
Of course.
And I played upon that.
Well, John, let me point out something. Let me point out something which you missed because you left the debate before it happened. Is towards the end, they mentioned that premise of kind of like the horizontal plane through the center of the celestial sphere and all that. And they made it sound like they didn't understand it or have never heard of it. Like it's
when they started calling me a liar and questioning
navigation.
When they broke down the ad homs, I just left because I was starting to get upset, and I didn't want to. I wasn't going to waste my time with people insulting me. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well.
Yeah, fair. So let me enlighten you on things that happened after you left.
Why are they?
So they did demonstrate.
It's.
Never mind.
It's the same. My bad. My bad if you weren't finished, bro. Go ahead.
Yeah, so So that the thing that he said he was going to do in his note there that Nathan just read, they acted like that didn't exist. Okay, so that's a point that can be drawn in on, because that clearly, from what 10th Man has read from the books, is part of it. Secondly, they did provide evidence of getting angles between curved lines, which I posted into the main chat here in Discord. How they did it is they picked 2 points on the curved lines, right? Then they created a vertex, and then they drew straight lines and got the angles from the straight lines. And that was them proving that you can get an angle from a curved line.
Are you talking about a chord? I didn't see this part. Through a circle?
No.
Well,
if someone can pull up that screenshot from the debate.
Yeah, we'll have a look. We'll have a look at that.
Because...
Sorry, Eli, just wait 1 second. We'll get a look at their No Atmo Day example in a moment. Before we do, though, quick couple of shout-outs. So, shout-out to, good name, Angle of Elevation. Thank you for the super chat. He says, at about the 2 hour, 8 minute of the debate, McToon admits that Ruhif's questions weren't his own, open brackets, inferring they were, in fact, his, close brackets. So John was disagreeing with a whole panel of anti-flat earther liars trying deceptively to save their religion. Thank you for the super chat. I don't know, maybe your assessment's correct, but I appreciate the support. Thank you very much indeed for the super chat Angle of Elevation. Also, Sasha, shout out to you, my friend, or Unitox Femo, as he's known in the chat. Thank you very much for the super chat. He says, only Nathan know that oceans doesn't curve, and we believe him. Only Nathan know that there is no rotation, and we believe him. Nathan. I think he's referring to the discussion with Gem Panda from yesterday, where apparently these are my disciples, and me asserting that oceans are flat means that it will be chanted back by my disciples. Yes, the oceans are flat, because Nathan doth decree. Thank you for the super chat, Unitox.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Nathan, when everyone's done, I'd
Eli.
like you to...
Yes, once Eli's gone. Go ahead, Eli, and Adam after, but 10th man in between. Go ahead, Eli.
So we critique an argument, or we critique the heliocentrism, or we critique something that actually indirectly or directly contradicts the globe, and what we get in response is these anti-flat earth positions that are only reinforced by more anti-flat earth rhetoric. Do you guys get that? Because whenever we bring up some aspect that we have looked up, like you're talking about right now, how many times is 10th Man quoted Bowditch, or any of these other manuals, or any of these other videos with navigators that are trying to teach, like, the layman person on YouTube, all of these things we have brought up, and they've not once brought up any material from these people, or in any other argument, any actual material. Typically, they just run with some kind of anti-flat earth position, like with the the 1 degree every 60 miles and from Polaris and blah 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 blah. But it's never actually any critique of anything practical.
Before we move on, they say the 1 degree every 69 miles. Yeah, you'll need a flat earth for that angle measurement.
Yeah. So the bottom line is interesting to point out that we're always into the rhetoric and they're always out of the rhetoric. It's interesting.
Go ahead, Adam.
Nathan, is it my turn or Adam?
Adam, then you.
Okay.
Eli said it nicely. That was one. I've not had a chance to see it yet, so I'll watch it this evening. But from what I'm hearing, this is exactly what I expected to happen. Would be, because this is McToon's challenge that nobody was interested in. That they've shuffled backwards to try, because they put so much effort in, to this perfect trap, their sextant trap, and that's why they have to just go through it, because they are robots. And even though it's not denying his fingers and ears, they were going to go through, I think, whatever they went through, and it sounds to me like that's exactly what happened. And John just done exactly what he did from the start. I was involved, like I say, in the conversations, and they were desperately. If you look at Ruhif's responses to me. He's constantly trying to feedback. He's constantly trying to affirm the rules of the deal. Do you know what I mean? Sending me, oh, whoopee, it's agreed, and then woohoo, look, he writes and lines out the McToon's challenge stuff. But that's why I was, like I said on Monday, so that was not my understanding, and it's not something I'd confirmed to them either. Yeah, he'll be doing the challenge. Because there was no challenge to do. Because John, to me, from what I've heard, it's exactly how I'd have done it. Because there is no point going past the point of concession. And that's what they were desperate to from the very setup of their little clever trap they thought they'd made. It had to exclude where that angle was acquired from. It was just instantly in there. And that is what Eli's basically saying, look. They're just picking on little nuances, but they're not actually dealing with the stuff. They're just arguing over the meaning of a word almost. It's not surprising, but I look forward to listening to it, John. It sounds like you've...
Well, I think further to Eli's point, also he's saying in a heretical manner, they're not in line with the globe claim. They're making up their own assertions. And when they do, the example he gave required a flat plane. But 10th man, if you can just put yourself on mute, obstrused. You're causing a bit of feedback when you're not talking.
I wanted to point out to you, Nathan, this is another example of what you said yesterday, where they are anti-globers.
Yeah, that's what I mean when I say in a heretical way.
That is heretical, because the obtainment of the elevation angle, it's quite clear how it's done. Yeah, how the fix is attained, it's quite clear how it's done. So they're having to be heretical to get past it, aren't they? The way they've done it is just to give that little bit of those numbers, just to not have to derive them, because as soon as they derive them, they are. Well, this is the interesting thing, isn't it? In celestial navigation, they are denying they're being heretics to celestial navigation, aren't they? Not necessarily to their ball, but to the methodology of celestial navigation, which isn't ours to defend. But that seems to be what they have to attack or misrepresent.
Absolutely. Their argument is with celestial navigation, if they don't like how it's performed, and it's performed utilising the prerequisite of a flat plane to perform it. Go ahead, 10th.
Okay, go to Master B. You can see I took screenshots of a back and forth with McToon and I on show 1694. I called it from the beginning. I knew what was going to happen. John knew what was going to happen. And we'll refer to his post at the end of these three screenshots. Do you see the first one?
Yes, replies.
Okay.
I'm very excited to host Ruhif and John Refracted Curvature tomorrow night on my channel. They will both be working through a celestial navigation example to get a location fixed. Not according to what we just read. 10th man, feel free to read your own.
Well, no, and go to the next slide. Then I responded, process trap. The fix is in, pun intended, of course. But you need elevation angle in the first instance, 90 degrees. The argument is over the moment they say elevation angle. Next slide.
McToon responds, 10th man. John agreed to demonstrate by way of example how celestial navigation determines the location fix. I'm looking forward to the demonstration. That's an outright lie.
Well, what did I say? I see you're getting antsy already. We'll see how you get along tomorrow in the actual debate. And then I'll go to a copy of what John posted and read that.
John replied when asked about whether or not he'd be providing a location fix as claimed by way of a lie that MC Toon has decided to publish. John Sheldon responds to Ruhif when asked about precisely this. So, we're going to use flat Earth angle measurements within the celestial sphere model of a flat Earth to prove a sphere, ? Do whatever. But I won't be wasting my time arguing past the point of concession. That would be the acquisition of elevation angle measurements from a flat plane, McToon, not your claim that he's agreed to acquire a fix as your neutral moderator's challenge. Stupid idiot. With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of you who smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a member, hit the thanks button after the fact, and all that good stuff. Once again, another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Stay tuned if you're watching on a premiering stream. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!
I'm telling you.
Yeah, so thank you, Neil. I appreciate that.
But some of them are just liars.
You're going to bang on this stream.
But I think
in the
that,
live show, I didn't get a chance to do this live, Brian. I was like, at one point, I really was tempted to say, rather than go and watch the train wreck that is McToon and Ruhif admitting that they need a flat plane, and go and watch Brian's exceptional video about how you derive the R value, because that was a great video. I was really pleased with it. I know I took the piss out of you in the comments, but that's just banter, right? You know that. But a great video. So I'm more than happy to plug that now I've watched it. Brian's video is exceptional. How did they get the R value? Well, they needed a flat plane. There you go. There's a quick summary of Brian's video. But he shows you in a very detailed way how they actually did it. Shows how the maths tallies up. So fantastic job, Brian. I'd much rather discuss that than whether or not they're liars. No offence.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. And that's the thing, Brian. What you're saying is it's technically true. You know, you've experienced what you're describing. I've experienced it. We've all experienced it. That said, that doesn't excuse my critique. But it's like instead of taking in the critique and going and using that to using that within your perspective, you're just like, nah, not that. They're just liars. But we get that. But what about this other bit of information that might, because what we need is people to be we need to remove the delusion from people. This delusion is not just for McToon or Ruhif, it's for our friends and families too. So how would we address them? How do we actually help if all we're going to do is call them liars when we know they're dumb as fuck? Excuse my language.
Well,
yeah, but we're not
No,
talking
that's true,
about...
because my cousin does the same thing, and she's not a liar. She'll say the same thing McToon says and Ruhit says. She's a teacher.
Yeah, but
she's not lying.
No, that's different. She's not being an anti-flat earther yet. She's being a glober. The point is that I have caught these people. I've caught these globers many times lying. I have evidence that they lied. Straight out lied. They're liars. A lot of them are stupid and they just follow along, right? They don't actually know any better. But there's a certain sector of them that are smarter than the rest, and they are liars.
Go back.
Make no mistake. Now, you can think of it, and you can call it cognitive dissonance if you want. I know, I have the evidence of several of them over the years. Still have it. Different occasions where they were caught lying straight out.
I'd like to go back to elevation angle and its definition. Okay, see what we see? So you finish it for me, Eli. 1, are they lying? 2, they can't read. 3, cognitive dissonance. 4, globe bias. Doesn't matter. Which one of those is it? When they can read the definition of an elevation angle.
All of them.
Okay, so then Brian's right. They're lying, they're cognitive dissonance, they're biased. It's all of it.
That's what I said, but that's what I just said, didn't I? I said, yeah, what you're saying you experienced is true. That's true. They do lie. That's what do you mean, though?
You've got a very
No, it didn't
confrontational way of agreeing, Eli.
It didn't come across that way.
I said also there's this other bit of information that you're not putting into your perspective. You're kind of rejecting it just to keep the perspective you have. That's what I said.
Right. So if they're rejecting it purposefully, are they lying?
Brian, not them, Brian.
I know. Okay. Transfer it to these two guys. If they purposefully reject the definition, make up their own as they go along, what are they doing?
Lying.
Thank you.
Morons.
Thank you.
Okay. But people lie because of cognitive dissonance.
Fine. They're still lying.
Right.
Okay, fine.
There's also another option. They're just wrong.
If they have the capacity to read and it says the opposite of what their bias is, they're more than wrong.
Without intent, they're just wrong. We can all agree they're wrong.
With
Why don't we just stick to that? They're wrong.
With intent, they redefine the definition to suit their own. They're more than wrong.
If they do it because of their cognitive dissonance, then it's not necessarily a violent intent.
In a way, you can say they're lying to themselves.
They're bloody lying.
Yes, in a way, you can say they're lying to yourself, Jim Jam.
I agree to that.
Yeah,
if there was
the
intent,
best way of putting it, I think, is that.
So then is the question, do they believe their own lie?
Yes.
No. If the intent is there to not be honest, then it's lying. It's dishonesty. Regardless of what way.
Brian, did you ever hear of pride?
Hang on. The real problem is that they're not willing to concede that they're wrong. It's not that they don't know they're wrong or they're fooling themselves. They're not willing to concede that they're wrong. So they will lie intentionally. They will do whatever they have to do to not concede. Roofy was willing to say that an elevation angle doesn't need two lines and then show two elevation angles with two lines each.
Yeah, that's kind of bad. I can't get around that.
He's not. People might think Roofy is totally stupid. Roofy is not stupid. He says some stupid stuff, right, in the heat of the moment because he's willing to say anything. He'll say anything at any point that he needs to say it. But Roofy is not.
But why
stupid.
is that,
If you think
Brian?
Roofy is stupid, then you're the one who is being naive.
Talk this.
So you think? Hold on. No, let's put this in perspective. So Roofy knows it's a flat Earth, but he's, for no reason that's apparent, is just lying to everybody because.
Yeah, I would liken him to the rumpus. Yeah, I wouldn't. Somebody like there are those out there that I would agree with the apologetics you're giving, John. But I think certainly if you're talking rumpus, Roofy, yeah, they are being deceitful. They are purposely trying to deceive. Whether that makes them a liar, I don't know, because it's a slightly different thing. Because to me, they're setting out with the intent to deceive. They know, and they also know very well what they're presenting is not actual evidence.
Yeah, but Adam, isn't a deceiver a liar?
The problem is that they can't defeat our arguments. It doesn't mean that they accept the earth is flat. It means that they accept that they can't defeat our arguments. So they're willing to use low tactics in defense of it.
The problem, it's their problem. It's their problem. We don't technically have a problem with it. They are the ones that making everything worse for themselves. That are going deeper into just ridiculousness. Right. It's their problem.
Well,
it's tough communicating with people like that. So I try to avoid it.
Let's look at it from a higher viewpoint, altitude, so to speak, the whole picture. It is a brilliantly constructed lie. It has hit every single celestial navigation book in existence. They show it in many ways, but within the deception that's so clever to make someone think that they're actually living on a curved surface, they have to show the math. When they show the math, you realize all the tables refer to the center of the earth where they can get a 90 equatorial plane. So it's never from a curved surface. It's you got to match whatever you do on a curved surface to that flat baseline at the center of a circle that doesn't exist. So they use a circle in a very clever way. They say it's the center of the earth, and this is that true altitude. And we've seen all the pictures. You get a 90 there. And now you got to do that on the surface. And here's how you do it. And they put in all of their little sophistry. And then these guys look at it and say, well, that's why we live on the globe. And that's why celestial navigation could only work on a curved surface. And then we start reading their books. And we say, well, I spot an inconsistency here. You're calling it an elevation angle with the sextant on the surface of the earth. It must match the presupposition that you live on a curved ball, so it can't unless you go to the center. And that's where everything has to originate from. So you really don't live on a curved surface. You live on a disk at the center, and the rest is just sophistry. We point that out to them. We show their own books with the inconsistency and contradictions. They are now in denial of that and fighting that to the point that they have to say an angle is not two straight lines. This is how crazy this is.
I don't want to argue about whether they're liars or not. I agree with Nathan. We'll all agree that they're wrong when they speak. They are wrong. But I would like to hear Brian describe how they get the radius value to their Earth they think's a globe.
Oh, well, great segue.
They take elevation angles to Polaris, and each one of those elevation angles would have the angle line to Polaris and the baseline of that elevation angle, which would be a horizontal from the observer to the GP of Polaris. And the GP of Polaris to Polaris will be the opposite. So they have the hypotenuse, they have the adjacent, and they have the opposite. Now, because it's the celestial bodies and because it's Polaris, they measure that distance in the horizontal with the zenith angle, right, multiplied by 60. So from the GP of Polaris moving due south to the equator, they found out that by the time they got to the equator, that their angle was 0, but their baseline was 5,400 nautical miles. So what they did from there is they knew then at the equator that the opposite side, right, or they found out the opposite side of Polaris would be exactly the same. So they made the equator a circle, meaning that every point on that circle to the GP of Polaris will be 5,400 nautical miles, because that's 5,400 minutes of degree, 90 degrees. So what they did then...
There'll be a brief interlude while Brian dies.
Sorry, this is off the cuff. I wasn't expecting to ask this. So what they did then was they knew that they had 90 degrees from the equator to the GP of Polaris, from anywhere at the equator. And what they did then is they made another 90 degrees the opposite direction, south. So they had 90 degrees north and 90 degrees south. So they knew that
they could basically make the world have a flat diameter of 4 times 90, right? Or 4 times 5,400 minutes of degree, which would be 21,600 right, minutes of degree all added together, which makes 21,600 nautical miles, right? Now they have to do that, and that would be 4 increments of 90 degrees. But they don't have the 90 degrees from the equator to a Polaris to the south. There is obviously the Sigma Octantis claim, but can't be see that. So maybe they used that point in the center, maybe they didn't. But the point is that they made they basically constructed the latitude and longitude grid basically off of the stars by making sure they had 290s north and 290s north and 290s south. They ended up with 21,600 nautical miles. They then took the 2 ends of those 90 degrees south. They took 90 degrees south in one direction and the opposing one in the opposite direction. And they put that line horizontally in orthographic view. And then they bent it so those 2 ends meet orthographically. Then they took the radius of that circle. They got the diameter of that circle, that 21,600 nautical mile circle, by dividing it by 3.14 pi, and that gave them the diameter. Then they divided that diameter by 2 to get a radius, right? That radius, though, would have been from a nautical mile standpoint originally, but it wasn't nautical miles then, because once they bent that line, it was no longer a nautical mile horizontal measurement. It then straight away, once that straight line became a circle, that 21,600 nautical miles became a calculation. So they couldn't leave it as a nautical mile, let's just say a radius that was derived from a nautical mile derivative, because it's obviously just a calculation, because that's not how that works. So they then converted that to statute miles, which came to 3958.098 and a load of numbers after that. But what they did then is they rounded it off up the way to 3959. And from that point on, the globe was born. So once they had that, once they did that calculation, once they got those flat Earth elevation angles down, locked to Polaris, after that point, they could create their globe. But once they bent that line, once they bent that 21,600 nautical mile diameter of the latitude and longitude grid, once they did that, it then became a calculation. It was no longer a measurement. That's why it's been called a value many times, because there is no measurement. So people add or into their maths. Surveyors add or in. Aerospace add or in. All these places, all these people, all these disciplines, they add or, right? None of them measure or, because it can't be measured, because it's an orthographic calculation. That's where it comes from.
Good segue, but no response from John. Yeah, thank you for telling us. Thank you for taking us through it, I should say.
Well, it's actually very, very simplistic, and I lay it out in my video. I start off in my video, right? It's a 41-minute video, but I start off defining what elevation is. Then I define the elevation angle. Then I show the view, the perspective view, that the elevation angles to Polaris is taken, right? And all celestial bodies, all elevation angles to celestial bodies is taken in that view. So we can't see orthographically. You can't buy orthographic binoculars. You can't buy orthographic glasses. There's no orthographic, you know what I mean? You can't, that doesn't exist. But there is no perspective view on the globe. So in reality, we have perspective view. On a globe, there is only orthographic depiction. So once they took it away from the reality perspective view and put it into orthographic depiction, it then just became a calculation and nothing more. And that's why no one has, and no one ever will, measure a globe's R value. Because you can't measure something that started off its life as presupposed or maybe deceitful calculation. It has to be deceitful. To do what they did, someone had to be deceitful.
Oh, why'd you have to go back to deceit? You just said they were wrong.
Screw that.
Well, to do what I've laid out, you can't do that without knowing you're doing it. It's not cognitive dissonance because you're not under the impression you're on a globe. You're giving the impression that it's a globe. That's the difference. So it had to start with deceit.
Right, you'd have to start with the belief it's a
cognitive
globe.
dissonance then. Sorry?
You'd have to start with the belief it's a globe to begin with. And what's the perfect shape in
How would you do that when all your measurements were all flat and you knew they were flat?
reason this debate is always put in the context of flat versus globe, but flat isn't a shape. Why is the shape of Earth always brought into this?
Yeah, but they didn't have flat versus globe. There was only flat Earth elevation angles. Elevation angles in reality that stretched horizontally 5,400 nautical miles from the equator to the GP of Polaris. That was the beginning of that is where the radius value comes from. So whoever decided to orthographically make a circle out of that eventual 21,600 nautical miles, they had to have been deceitful. There's no way around it. That wasn't an accident.
Yeah, but
I believed Earth was a sphere to begin with.
You can't get a radius to the Earth, but you can get a radius to the globe because the globe is a model that exists in ideal space. It doesn't exist in reality. So you can actually measure, right, a radius of a circle that's a segment of a globe because it's all mathematical constructs.
Well, I'm with
This is the trick they wanted.
Frank?
Hold on. This is the trick that they were trying to get John to do. They wanted John to do the math because it would require the R value. And then they wanted to trick John by saying, look, John, you use the R value of the Earth. But he wouldn't have. He would have used the R value of a globe model based on flat Earth geometry in the first instance, which was John's concession in his little note that Nathan read.
Yeah, but there is no globe model. They're using a flat Earth model. For you to use the celestial sphere, you need to calibrate to the celestial sphere first. You need a compass
There is a
for
globe
north
model.
and south
There is a globe
position,
model.
and you need to establish your horizontal plane. And this is
Well,
before you
listen,
even start using the celestial sphere.
Yeah, whatever.
Hold on.
John understood what I said.
The celestial sphere is not a globe model. When you project the flat Earth from the celestial sphere up onto the celestial sphere, it becomes a globe.
Yo.
Ian, somebody's causing a shitload of feedback. Who's that? The person that just put themselves on mute 10 seconds ago. Anyway, carry on, John.
I was just saying that the globe is a projection from flat Earth celestial sphere model. It's projecting that flat Earth up onto the stars above. And that's where you get putting the guy on the top of the protractor. So the globe is a projection of flat Earth, and then all the maps are projections of globes. So that's why you have so much distortion in all these things, because it's a projection of a projection.
Right, I get it. Yeah, John, you're right. Technically, the map used for celestial navigation is two apparently parallel planes, right? But the visuals, when we actually see it, the celestial sphere is kind of like a sphere around us, or a demi-sphere. So that's why it's called that, because that's what we actually get to see. But in the map coordination system, it's two parallel flat planes with undefined distances between them.
Well, no, I'd have to disagree with that. Sorry, I'll be quick then.
Why?
No. The protractor, which is the basis for the celestial sphere model, and the celestial sphere model are just orthographic representations of perspective view. But we don't view the curved line, because you can have a square protractor. We don't view the curved arc of the protractor. We don't view the sky like that. We view a perspective view of the sky. So we don't see the curve. The curve is only a way of, protractor is a tool. The protractor is a tool that allows people to draw angles orthographically. because in reality, you can't measure an angle orthographically. You can only measure it in front of the
What the
perspective.
hell does orthographic have to do with
Because
the
the
nature of
protractor
the
is an orthographic
celestial
tool.
sphere as used
So,
in celestial navigation? That's the machinations of the globers.
No, this protractor and the celestial sphere are orthographic tools. They're not reality-based perspective tools. They are depicting. They're trying to depict
what
perspective view in orthographic.
Yeah, but that has nothing. There is no actual relevant relation between the two. It's just an machination insertion because in celestial navigation, there is no orthographic view involved at all. That's what they brought. What they shoved in between there to try and delude people into making a point about it, right? But the celestial sphere in the mapped form is two parallel flat planes with an undefined distance between them. And that's how it works, right, Tenth Man?
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Because that's what you taught me.
No, yeah, but I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that, Owen. That we treat the sky as a horizontal parallel to a beam sea level, or horizontal, in celestial navigation. No, that's fine. I'm talking about the protractor, but I'm talking about when they try to depict that orthographically, and as a tool, they gave the protractor and the celestial sphere model an arc. But that is only as a way of depicting the angular change, the perspective change. That's all that is. That's my point. It's an
I don't
orthographic
understand
tool.
what you're talking about and how it relates to what I was just talking about.
Well, maybe I picked you up wrong. I thought you said this. I thought you were saying that the sky appears curved, which it doesn't.
No.
No, sorry.
No. Look, the celestial, I see it as holographic, right? It doesn't have any location. It's just at the edge of vision is what I used to call it. And it's not actually there. But the way celestial navigation uses it is when it's exactly on top of you, right above you, and then, put that into a map grid. And that's how they made the celestial plane. Right? That's what's really being used.
Hang on.
The celestial
many
sphere
things.
is projected in orthographic view, the celestial sphere. That's how we observe it. And for you to have the angle measurements, because what the celestial sphere is going to give you, for example, the sun's path. Let's say if you are on the latitude, let's say 23, the sun's path will be in an angle of 23.
I just don't understand what
You
this
need a
has to
flat
do with
plane for
orthographic
that.
view. Why orthographic view? I don't understand why that's being inserted.
All right, back to the original topic, the R value. The measurements all originate at the center of a presupposed sphere. It's on the equatorial plane. Is there an R value there?
What's that noise? What's that noise going on? Can we hear that?
It's in Discord, yes.
Is it in Discord? Was it coming out of my mic on your...
Yes.
Guys in
It's somebody in
Discord,
Discord.
please can you keep the noise down? Mute if you're not talking.
Since the tables say all of the values for the angles originate at the center on the equatorial plane, a flat plane, can you put an R value there on a flat plane?
Well, at the centre of a circle of equal altitude, maybe, but if you mean a spherical radius, then no.
No, because all it is a disk. That's all it is. It's a circular disk. It's flat. It comes to the edges of the terrestrial Earth. It continues and extends all the way to an imaginary celestial sphere with all the luminaries stuck on it in a concave fashion, the inside of a sphere, wrapping around this imagined ball we live on. But the tabulations are all done from the center of this disk. Don't put the arc of the protractor on it yet, or below it to fulfill a full circle. Just one disk in space, let's say. That's where the angle originates. Is there an R there?
No.
Okay.
No, it's a grid system, right? It's for coordination. It's not actually a disk. It's just very easy to put it down as a disk because it's a reliable, easy to portray tool that way.
Well, let me go on.
Put it on the map.
It's flat in order to have a baseline in order to get an elevation angle from it, correct?
I'm not sure.
Well, of course you're sure. That's where all the tabulations have to match. All celestial navigation angle measurements must match from the center of the Earth, which is equatorial plane, which is flat because it shows a 90 there. Now, what they did was put the arc and said, we live on the surface. Now they made it into a ball, a sphere, whatever you have. And now they have to, as Brian so eloquently showed, they have to use real observations, Polaris. They have to figure out how to not violate that. So they get 5,400 nautical miles before it disappears on the horizon, because if you're under it, it's 90. And as you walk backwards, as it drops in the sky due to perspective, it reaches zero equator, because the equator is known as zero. Even on their model is zero. What's zero? Okay, and then they say, let's put a bottom half to it that we never see, because the observer is never seeing the stars at the bottom half of the supposed celestial sphere. All the celestial sphere is the viewer's image because of the way the eye works. Adam was eloquent in this. If you put a protractor on your eye and put the point where the vertex is to the center of your eyeball, 90 is directly in front of you, and you can just look at something now. You'll see that to the sides, it starts dropping off. That's how the eye works. And so the ancients saw the sky that way and said, we live under a dome. And the ground has to be the baseline of a protractor, because that's the way the eye works. What the Globers did was say, let's add another protractor underneath. We never do anything from there, but we'll pretend we do.
Right, a virtual protractor. They just rounded out the other half virtually, when like how the stars spin around us and as we move around, it remains very suggestive, right? That's why I have no objection to calling it a celestial sphere, even though in the reality we only see a demisphere and it's only apparent with no actual distances to the observer.
We never see the full celestial sphere because it's below the horizon.
Yeah, but it's not actually anywhere.
That's what I said. It's imaginary. That's my whole point.
Yeah, and so I'm agreeing with you. Thank you.
So if you're an observer in the Americas, say North America, and you're an observer in Australia, they want you to think that's antipodal. But it's not. Guess what the guy in Australia has to do? Take it to the center of the Earth. A flat plane. And it's an elevation angle. So it's somewhere between 0 and 90 to him.
But
that's correct. Elevation angles to the sun from sunrise to sunset. The arch that you draw in the sky.
Yep. That's how it looks through our eyes, because that's the way our eyes work. And like I said, Adam did a good job. And Brian's doing a good job by saying it's perspective. And then they decided to say, well, let's turn this viewing and our flat plane into a globe. And they did. And that's why McToon and Ruhif and all these guys can go to these cleverly written navigational books and see the machinations of sophistry, how they get it to work. But then that's what we do. We go to the same books and we say, look, you have 3 parallel lines. 2 of them are above the surface of your curved Earth. 1 of them's at the center, but all the tabulations originate from the center, which means no one's there. So how are you getting it there if you're on this supposed curve? Oh, I have to do some math. I have to put an arc radius. But there is none of those things. It's all from the center, which is the equatorial plane to begin with, which is really the surface of the Earth, is that center. They just added 2 arcs, one on top, one on the bottom, made of the globe.
Right. They imagine the globe within it. the sphere underneath you. It's ridiculous. It's like they should realize what they're doing at that point, but a lot of them just don't. But I got a question, 10th Man. What do you think about like the Southern Cross? Right there is this apparent position in the apparent celestial sphere where it's like rotating around that Southern Cross. But like, have you ever like seen it at South Africa and Australia and Argentina?
No,
like,
that's
is it
not-
always
hold on,
just?
It's not a pole. It's not a pole
is the same
position
as
there.
everything
It's just
else.
empty space.
The Southern Cross.
No, I get it. I get that, but
a
it does
correction to make.
apparently rotate around that sort of position,
No,
right?
we're all trying to correct you, but you just won't stop talking. No, it does the exact same thing all the other stars do. There's no point that doesn't move that's lit up in the southern quote-unquote hemisphere. There is no point.
The Southern Cross itself points to the center, a central point of the rotation in the south of the equator. But the central point is where they say Sigma Octantis is, a thing nobody can see. But the Southern Cross moves itself.
Follow that, Arwin.
What? It does?
So the Southern Cross
Like,
is
it
pointing.
doesn't- so it's not a center
Arwin,
point.
Your upward intonation means you need it repeating or changing verbally slightly. So there's a point in the stars that's shaped like a cross, and it's pointing at a central position in the sky that is empty. And it, if you want to describe it that way, rotates around that central point that has nothing in it. But that's all it does. So there's no point that's like Polaris that doesn't move. There's no equivalent.
Right. No, I get that, but that's a detail. I was just asking, like, because there's just still this paradigm within Flat Earth and people that think it's a disc, and it's always just like, yeah, it's very weird idea that if it would literally be a disc, that if you move around the outside of the disc, that the entire star apparent system would just rotate with you to always show the Southern Cross exactly south, even though it's not an actual direction anymore. So I was just wondering, is this still just a bit of a mystery for me? Because I haven't
You're mixing
actually
up
been
the
to
Southern
those places
Cross.
myself.
Mixing up the Southern Cross with what they call Sigma Octantis. The Southern Cross points to the central point of that rotation. But the star they claim that everyone is looking at, or this comes from the borders getting their claim wrong. They should be claiming that everyone's looking towards Sigma Octantis, something we can't see, but it's supposed to be at the center of the rotation point, right? But they keep on saying everyone's looking from 3 different points is looking at the Southern Cross. No, the Southern Cross points towards that location, and the Southern Cross changes its position throughout the year.
It does?
It's not at the center. Southern Cross is not at the center.
What? Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Do you have like a time-lapse video of that you could show me? I want to see that because I've never heard of that before, that it actually moves.
Yeah, I don't have, I'm walking and I just have my phone with me. The Southern Cross, just put into Google, does the Southern Cross move, or look at the Southern Cross.
Okay, I will. That's new to me.
It's just 4 stars really, I think, in the star field that are moving just like any others that you think in the north. You know, it's just an organisation of stars that cross kind of points towards the south, doesn't it, in the star field? But that's all it is. I think it's at like 60 degrees south, isn't it? It's not anywhere near any southerly distance. It's actually quite.
The Southern Cross can be seen in the Philippines, Texas, Florida, North Africa at certain times of the year.
Right, but does it stay consistently rotating around its apparent position, or does it like move around? Because that's what I got from you. I know that Polaris is always in the apparent exact center of the northern rotation.
Just think of it like Orion, just as Orion moves. It doesn't change their relative positions. It's just they all.
But it's not at the center.
It'd be more like Ursa Major. Southern Cross is like Ursa Major, except that Ursa Major is closer to the North Star than Southern Cross supposedly is to South Pole, which doesn't exist. It just goes around in a circle, kind of. But it goes east to west. You can't see it simultaneously from like South Africa, Australia, New Zealand all at the same time.
You can't?
No.
What?
No, it's not. It's different day and night cycles. When it's daytime in Australia, it's nighttime in Africa or South America and stuff too.
No, you're getting from their claim. There is one time in the year when within the globe model you can look south from South Africa, South Australia, and South America, and you can see Sigma Octantis. That's their claim, but they mixed it up. They're idiots. They've mixed it up with the Southern Cross, but that's a mathematical thing that is only mathematical. It only works mathematically on a globe. It doesn't work in reality. In reality, you cannot see that same point from those same three locations. And that point I'm talking about is not the Southern Cross. That Southern Cross. I know you weren't saying that, but the Southern Cross is a different thing. The Globers don't even know the difference between Sigma Octantis and the Southern Cross.
But how do you know? Have you seen like a dedicated video specifically to that concept?
Because I researched this. This was a claim back in 2015 originally. Nathan.
Yeah, but by interjecting at this point, I've got to undermine what you've just said, Brian.
Off you go, Nathan. Whatever you have to say.
Well, you're right in terms of how you take it apart after you beg the question. But all this is an affirming the consequent fallacy. So if the Earth is a sphere rotating, then I will observe star rotation thus in the southern hemisphere. I do observe this star rotation that I'm going to describe. I can see these three stars from these 3 points in the southern hemisphere. Therefore, Earth's a sphere. So it's an affirming the consequent formological fallacy that assumes the Earth's a sphere, assumes we've got hemispheres, assumes that when you view these stars above you, you're actually below your northerly position when you travel south. So you've assumed that you're antipode when you look up. You're not actually looking up. Respected to where you started, you're looking down. Well, why are you assuming that when you're antipode, you're at the southern hemisphere? It's just a begging the question fallacy on steroids.
Yeah, but that's what But when I detailed it, it's a thing that works on their model at one point in the year. And mathematically, that's where that claim comes from. It's a maths claim that they can never show in reality. So you're 100% correct. They have to pre-assume all that. But in the end of the day, it's a maths claim. They can never show it in reality because it doesn't exist.
No, but it wouldn't matter if they did.
No, it doesn't prove anything. But it only affirms what they're trying to claim. That's all it does.
Right. So they're saying you can observe a certain behaviour in the stars. Okay. Therefore, Earth's a sphere because I travelled antipode when I went and looked at them? No. You're assuming I'm travelling antipode to a southern hemisphere on the bottom of a sphere to observe them, and then you're describing how they work on the bottom of a hemisphere that you've assumed you've travelled to. So whether or not it lines up with what you say will happen is irrelevant, because your Q statement, stars visible from 3 different locations, doesn't affirm that we've travelled antipodal to be at the bottom of a sphere to observe it when you assumed it.
And that would be a violation also of the celestial sphere. Because you would need to recalibrate the celestial sphere to the southern part.
Oh, John's not here to say yes. Yes, that's right.
I'm just remaining here with this puzzle about the disk reification of some flat earthers, and like how would the celestial sphere keep orienting the apparent Southern Cross point of rotation within the apparent sphere of the heavens Like, how could it just always keep rotating with you in Euclidean space? It's just so counterintuitive, right? I never got that part. But of course, to me, like the celestials are all holographic, and that does kind of make it easier. It's like, yeah, whatever. It's just orientated the way it's orientated. So you can't really be even sure of like how the land masses are divided in a Euclidean setting based upon the celestials. The only thing you can get out of it is the consistent relation, really, and then map out the difference, the celestial map and the terrestrial map.
That's when the orthographic view comes in, because you will be always in the center of that sphere, no matter where you go inside of that sphere. You'll be always in it, so you can see yourself in it.
Exactly.
I have to say, I love Arlen. Arlen, I love you. I love how you slipped in the holographic model that you have, or the idea. It's not a model, it's the idea. I thought that was very clever the way you got that in there. Good job.
But it's an open question. I asked it in 2016, and yeah, you know, it remains a question that is to be left to be answered. So I'm just gonna try to maneuver it in subtly. I don't want to rub people the wrong way. It's just an issue, right? And we're dealing already with flat earthers that are reifying things. I was basically there already 5 years ago, 6 years ago.
No, that's why I said
Already
that was,
spotted it.
Yeah, I was saying that was a great job of, you know, putting your idea in there. Because did anyone challenge it?
No, not really. Brian had a detailed remark about it, but he's dropped also now. And so is 10th? What?
They're just so offended by the idea of the holographic celestials. They've left in anger.
Everybody's leaving.
What's the temperature over there in the US?
Before we
Very
change
hot.
subject,
My air conditioner is broke.
what was more clever, John, was how he repackaged your acclaim from "it's clever how you slipped in your belief" to, well, it's an interesting question that I'm asking, and it is fascinating how my question hasn't been answered. That was also quite clever.
Yes.
Thanks.
Yes, it was. I love Arwen. He's awesome.
That's why I love him too.
Ah, thanks, guys.
The exquisite mind of Arwen.
But now that's also one of the things I get frustrated with him about too. Is like even when he's agreeing with you, sometimes he can make you feel like he's not.
Yeah, it's a compulsive thing. Sorry about that. It's just that I can't let you get too comfortable, because then you get less productive, right? It's really that. And I apply it to myself first.
As one of your slaves and minions, you can't get too comfortable.
Yeah.
So that's why I get mad when he acts a certain way, because you're too good for that, Arwen.
No, I apply it to myself first and foremost. So it's just, that's just how I work.
Okie dokie. I'm not slightly offended by that at all.
Awesome.
I am.
Okay, let me hear it. What's your problem?
British sarcasm. The press sarcasm. I just want to point out that Ruhif did have to use 2 straight lines to measure his angle between those squiggly lines. You know, I just want to continue to reiterate that. It just seems absolutely insane.
Yeah, he was trying to say that there was an angle there with squiggly lines. Yeah, you can't. You need 2 straight lines to define an angle, meeting at a vertex. So he didn't understand geometry when he said that those squiggly lines were angles.
That's
But
where
when
it does
tried
get
to
very.
define the angle, he drew
Oh,
straight
sorry.
lines.
I love the word
Oh, you're fine,
squiggly
go ahead.
lines. I love it because it's so applicable to their machinations, right? Just like CERN is probably just squiggly lines, and the telescope shit is squiggly lines, and then the artist's impression of the squiggly lines. That's what they do. The globers, the globe priests, define squiggly lines. That's their profession.
Absolutely, 100%.
Yep.
Hold on a second, guys in G+. Go ahead, guy in Discord. What were you going to say?
My bad. I think I'm cutting in right now. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I just, and, to highlight a little bit what you guys are talking about, is it dishonesty or is it them just not knowing, ignorant? I think the argument can be put forth that Ruben is being dishonest because he's very careful with his words. Like, even in what he was talking about last night, he was very careful to say in between those two squiggly lines, you can measure an angle at points, but seeming to leave it open that they were kind of saying that, oh, they're taking this angle from the squiggly lines, but then admitting that they needed to draw the line, the straight lines from the point at which they're converging those squiggly lines in order to draw the angle, not really being clear there. So it seems like Roofy is being dishonest to me
You're correct. No, Roofy is really deep into it. And he's probably in fear too, because you could see it on him. He lies, and he knows it.
Yeah, it's definitely in the specificity of his words and how he deflects or glosses over certain parts of it and acts like, I've compared it to this before. It's like when I was younger and I used a bad word, and then the adults were trying to tell me, like, trying to pretend like they didn't know what this word was to like try and convince me that it wasn't even a word. But at the same time, they're just playing dumb that they know the word. It's the same exact thing.
Yeah, I kind of agree. If you don't know that acquisition of a flat Earth elevation angle measurement destroys your argument, you wouldn't know to interrupt and interject at the point that that's being aired to your audience. Ergo, dishonesty. I kind of see your point. Whether or not it's true, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with, but I see what you're driving at.
And it's very interesting to me, like, in the short time that I've been talking to him a little bit, he's insistent on, like, every time we meet to ask me if I'm a Glober yet. And he does kind of chuckle and laugh about it, but it's like, what is his vested interest in me becoming a Glober and what I believe?
I don't know, is that rhetorical? Are you asking us to divine his thoughts?
Want their people back.
Oh, someone wants to divine his thoughts. Go ahead. Maybe ask him, what's in it for you? Who cares what I believe? Why are you so concerned with what I believe?
But I mean, if I'm hypothesizing that this man is disingenuous, am I really going to ask him a question honestly to get an honest answer and expect an honest answer?
I don't know. I'm not interacting with this man, so you can't really use that as a defense, can you?
Yes, but I feel like, I guess I'm kind of on Sleeping Warriors level of thinking when he's saying that he just wants them to present their begging the question, logic and have faith in the people that are listening to it. Yes, there's a lot of people that get, bamboozled by it or whatever. They don't really put that much other thought into it, but there's plenty of people out there that can see through it and see, when they're just sitting in their chat talking insults and,
it's kind of clear, you know, who's being dishonest here.
Yeah, but it's slightly off though, because they don't. You shouldn't be wanting to. They don't want to just beg the question. No, they want to draw you, the flat earther, in with them begging the question. That's what they really want, and that's not. On the long run, it's not productive because it's just you just get launched
That's
in
a good
dream
answer.
world.
Yeah, I'll go with that from personal experience. They want you to beg the question with them. So when they were allowed, or when we didn't realise that we were begging the question with them, they came here in droves, because that's precisely what they want. They want you to say, so what you're saying is, if the Earth's a sphere with a radius of 3959, then every distance to horizon will have a straight line tangent point to it if you're doing this geometry, and you'll ignore the black swan. So long as you're saying if the Earth's a sphere at the beginning of your statement, they're happy. That relieves their pain temporarily, because they've gone,
Yes,
yeah,
it
there he
does.
is. He's begging the question of a sphere with me. So he thinks it's a sphere.
It gives them their little fantasy room, and now suddenly they can just go with their knowledge of when it is a sphere, right? So yeah, that makes them happy if you beg the question with them.
That's why I said that begging the question was the single worst fallacy of them all, because this is where all unjustifiable claims are born. I was going to say something because I saw it flash on the screen earlier, the 90 and with the globe and the space, and I'm like, I know that it's I know it's cognitive dissonance, because they'll say you don't need the 90 is with you, and you create the vertical, you don't need the horizontal. But they're mistaken, because with that they'll say an example is using the bubble sextant, but the bubble sextant is establishing a horizontal. So you're not getting anything from the vertical, but for whatever reason, their cognitive dissonance just resets the loop in their brain. They're not taking in.
Oh, I love.
Saying.
I was just about to say, I love the vertical that doesn't reference Earth. It has to be Earth. That is awesome. I love it when they go to that. Do you know what I'm talking about, Elijah? Because you said they use the bubble sextant, or they'll just establish a vertical and then claim 90 degrees to that as horizontal, and then claim the vertical has nothing to do with Earth.
Exactly. Like I was talking to somebody who said you only need a vertical, and then he said, imagine this, imagine no Earth at all, imagine space. Then you orient yourself to the star and you use yourself as the reference. I'm like, yeah, but if there is no, you don't have an angle then. Like, how do you orient yourself when there is no foundation? If yourself is the foundation and you're saying you are lined up with the star, that's just a line.
But let me get it straight. When we say this navigation process uses a baseline, and you measure an angle called an elevation angle to an item that you see elevated above it, the baseline. The reason you're doing this is because you're navigating the ground that you're taking this angle from, and you're using aspects of what you see around you, including the horizon, or if not, a tool that will give you the same thing, to establish your baseline. Now that's an angle acquisition from a flat Earth, and when this is put to a glober, their response is to say, imagine the ground isn't there. Whoa, 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 whoa. Aren't we trying to navigate the ground, you fucking retard? But we're going to imagine ourselves in space devoid of ground. But I'm trying to find my way around the ground, you fucking idiot.
Yeah, that's what I meant earlier about this anti-flat Earth rhetoric. We're into the rhetoric, and then they just make shit up. Totally non sequitur points that have nothing to do with the scrutiny of the claims put to us in the beginning.
According to John Roofy did this. So he described the plumb line in the air, in space, nothing to do with the ground, but then showed it in reference to the ground immediately afterwards. Now I said, well, that's why it's called cognitive dissonance as opposed to deceit. Because for him to state that verbally and then completely contradict his position, making it untenable, means cognitive dissonance. That's textbook, right?
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like he was like, I can establish a horizontal without using the ground. All I need is a vertical. But the vertical uses the ground. When you drop that plumb bob on Earth, right? Because once you introduce the idea of free space, you no longer have a vertical. So you have to be on Earth to get a vertical. Even in their belief structure.
It amazes me that we're having to drag the anti-flat Earth heretics back down to Earth to perform navigation. Does it scare them that we're doing it on the ground with a flat baseline? Yeah, you bet it does. Because they're going to go off into space with plumb bobs that aren't meeting anything at 90 degrees to navigate a non-ground that we're not going to consider when it comes to navigation. That's their reply. Oh, it's epic. It's a good time to be a flat earther.
Plumb bobs are you can do that. You can use a plumb bob. You can use the horizon. If you use a plumb bob, you're not trying to find your zenith. You're trying to make sure you've got a 90 degree at your feet to the surface. That's all a plumb bob's doing. Now, when you do a plumb bob, you actually read things backwards because you're reading from that, but it's still all in reference to the surface of which you are going to apply all these calculations to after you've taken the measurement to navigate on. But it's always applicable to the surface, otherwise there'd be no point doing it.
Yeah, but for them it doesn't reference the curved surface. So they have to take it very much away from the surface of the ground. That this is a process of navigation, lads. Navigating the surface. Yeah? But because it's not curved, you're going to take it off into space and then immediately bring it back down to the ground that isn't going to give you an angle. So the only reason you're establishing this plumb bob to give you a 90 to the ground that you're standing on, that you're going to be navigating and drawing out circles on flat maps. That's how it works. It must be painful for them at the moment. It really must be.
Yeah, they always got to fall back to a flat plane. They have no choice. But they emotionally cannot allow themselves to recognize that fact.
Well, you know, when I was laughing at him yesterday, I was genuinely trying to be nice to them and get them to understand it. But I couldn't help it. They were descending it so far into absurdity that I couldn't stop giggling, because they were saying things like a vertical doesn't need to reference the ground, but you have to be on Earth to get a vertical. So it was like he immediately referenced the ground. You know, like
I don't blame you.
It's hard not to laugh at stuff like that.
Right, it's because it's stupid.
Bad afterwards because
It's cheap.
I was
It's
laughing
ill
at him.
thought through. It doesn't hold any ground.
Stupid. You're stupid, Ruhif. We're laughing at you for it.
Was this interaction recorded? Is there somewhere I can watch this?
It might get trimmed out by Quantum Eraser. He's typically the type of person that will go through it and take every stupid thing that Ruhif and McToon said and throw it back in their faces. So, give it time.
He's probably working on it now. That's why we've not heard from him.
Exactly. There'll be no clips
You're
to
right.
come.
You're right.
Am I right, John? Is there plenty of numpty clips to be extracted from that?
It was about an hour and 40 minutes, I think. So, yeah.
Numpty clips.
Yeah, he's got them out
Nice.
wazoo with that, because it was like they kept them coming.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. I'm looking forward to the numpty clips.
Also, thank you, QE. You just got to let them open their incoherent pie holes and they'll dig themselves the biggest grave you've ever seen.
They'll build themselves a giant tomb.
I'd like to get that quote too. Someone trim it out. But Toon saying you don't need 2 lines for an angle.
That was Ruhif said that.
I don't think Ruhif. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, he's correcting me. He said that's Ruhif that said that. You don't need 2 lines for an angle.
Yeah, McToon is not so eager to be on the front line of doublespeak. That's more Ruhif. That's more Ruhif's department. He
They were
always
working
goes
in
there.
They were working in such harmony. Yesterday, they were working in such harmony. It was almost a ballet of stupidity. And it was hard not to appreciate it. Because, like, I was thinking to myself, which one's the moderator and who am I debating? You know? There were several moments where, like, they were connected on some other level, just that was.
It's the power of consensus,
amazing.
John. The power of consensus.
But it isn't.
I
It's,
hope they're a
it's,
disservice.
they're
They've been
seeking.
working on this for months and months and months. So it'd be unsurprising that they've not got the same script in front of them, mate. That would not surprise me.
Owen said it's
I
consensus.
guarantee it.
It's not. It's what Adam's now describing is them working between themselves, so that it's not on their own, alone heresy. It's together with our new explanation, dropping plumb lines in space when doing navigation. It's their own heresy. So they need a little bit of company when they're doing that.
Right, their own little consensus. They're trying to set a trend. Like, oh, look at how we figured this out. See, we both agree on this. We're together. You can do this too.
Everybody in the world could agree on something, and it's still not right. You know, like that's. I don't think I understand that either.
I can understand Adam's point that they've been working on this together for weeks and weeks, working out how they were going to wangle this, that, and the other. Oh, how beautiful! The moderator working along with one of the participants, so that they're singing in harmony on the neutral platform. Yeah, that sounds about right, Adam.
Is that what they believe a neutral platform is? Oh, in all
A neutral platform
believe
is where
that.
they have a chance. That's what a neutral platform is.
No, it isn't. It's another one of their bait and switches, isn't it? Not for all they've gone on about. They're then given the opportunity to demonstrate that actually the word might mean something. That, yeah, a neutral platform is a neutral platform. Yet it's the complete opposite. It's not even a biased moderator, is it? It's somebody that's in on the jig. Yeah, it exemplifies them and their projection to us, doesn't it? Perfectly.
Right, because otherwise they wouldn't have a chance. So that's why a neutral platform is a place where they would have a chance, even though they have lost blatantly in the argument.
So what you're saying is what they mean by neutral is there's a possibility that at worst there might be a neutral outcome.
Exactly.
People might go, hold on, that half a second response that he gave seemed to make a point that they needed a flat earth to do these angle measurements. I mean, I only heard half of it after a half-hour presentation and summary. But there we go. That's neutral. Yeah.
Well, that was another thing that was making me laugh, was the idea that that was supposed to be a debate on a neutral platform. Like, I'm sitting there thinking to myself, they're claiming this is a neutral platform, and I'm arguing with the moderator. You know, like it was a joke, but just to sit back and not worry about whether you're right or wrong, and just see them do the dance that they were doing, it was hilarious. They were like jumping on hot coals and pretending like their feet weren't burning.
What you got to do. That's what's needed to argue for the globe. You need it all stacked in your favour to even have a chance of getting a neutral outcome. And by neutral, I mean the audience won't realise how fucked you were when you were asked how you got the elevation angle measurements for your little challenge to get a fix. Yeah, you needed a flat earth for that, boys. Did you need a neutral platform for that not to be heard? Yeah, that's what you think's neutral. Neutral, my ass. Yeah, I'm glad this happened.
I'm in a doctor's surgery here, but if you look at the chat, what I noticed about the chat was that
some of the people in the chat were agreeing with what John was saying, even though they were on the opposing side. They were agreeing with John. They're saying, when John brought up the point about the 2 degrees, the sun being 2 degrees above the horizon, how could you get an angle then using Eratosthenes, the Eratosthenes method, if the surface is curved? They were agreeing with that. One guy actually said, that would be very, very difficult. And some of them actually agreed that John had a point in what he was saying about the celestial sphere model, but then they were also calling John dishonest. But I was kind of, the people in the chat that were most kind of jeering up Ruhif and MC Toon were people like Blue Marble Science and Wolfie, who are just, they don't have any opinion other than, the one opinion, if you know what I mean. So it was only really them. It was most of the rest of the chat were kind of not even totally against John. There were some of them that weren't even totally against him. They weren't on his side, but they weren't totally against what he was saying, because they couldn't really be.
And what does that say for the status of the globe religion, that you can't even get your followers to agree with you?
Well, I think it was fairly obvious, John, that...
Regress. That's what it's saying. Regress.
I think it was fairly obvious, John, that it wasn't a case of you versus Ruhif, but it became a case of you versus Ruhif and MC Toon. And I think some of the people in the chat kind of, maybe I'm wrong, you can read back, but I think some of the people in the chat, I think they kind of see that wasn't exactly neutral, it wasn't exactly a fair one-on-one. So I think they did hit on that.
Well, I feel good just being able to go in there and point out that this whole time they've been holding up a false dichotomy, model versus model. And they've actually been holding up one of our models of a flat Earth, but just claiming it's a globe. And it felt good to go in there and point that out. Now, and maybe some people will hear it and, actually look for themselves, good for them. But, it felt good to just state the truth. They could call it a lie if they want to, but it is what it is.
Well, that's excellent to hear. So, in other words, at the end of this process, ordeal, whatever you want to call it, you didn't come out scathed. You came out cognitively soothed. You felt good about the fact that you got to air their requirement for a flat plane to them directly under their terms. Not lose sleep over it, not deeply concerned. Feel free to come here after the fact and discuss it very calmly with us, with lots of interruption from people who want to put their 2 pennyworth in. Yeah, I assure you, they lost a lot of sleep over it and dedicated a lot of sleepless nights to the outcome that they got. So, rest on your comfortable laurel that you don't need to do anything more than you have. You've not got any woes or worries after the fact, and they have. It's been pointed out to them that they proved the flat plane when they got their fix. Well, that's not going to sit well with them. It didn't sit well with them when you put it to them. It won't sit well with them now. They won't like us discussing how it won't sit well with them, and how it didn't sit well with them, and how they showed their audience how well it didn't sit with them on the neutrality that was the 5 minutes of, let's be honest, 5 seconds of you responding to a 25-minute introduction, video, and summary.
I did sleep pretty good last night. It was almost therapeutic just to be able to state the obvious truth of the world we live in.
Right, now compare and contrast that to Conspiracy Cats, who's given up his Flat Earth channels in an attempt to run away from this subject that he appreciates. He's got to give us a Flat Earth. End quote. Well, when you gave us that Flat Earth, Cats, and told Haunted House about the awful truth you would have to contemplate when you realised the inevitability of a Flat Earth and the lie that would entail, that is the sleepless nights that your compadres who you may have parted your channels off to are experiencing right now. And maybe one day, like you, they'll run away from it. But it won't leave them. It's cemented in their cognition whether they like it or not. And yours, Cats. I'm talking to you even though you've ran away and probably won't hear this. It'll just come up when someone else brings it up for Cats, as he made clear when he talked to Haunted House. And Toon, maybe he's a little bit further back on that journey. Maybe he's less intelligent than Cats. And it might take him a little bit longer to realise he's been thrown in this tiny little pond with us because his non-belief he didn't realise he had got was just as dangerous as the flat earthers he faces when he thinks he's challenging us and our rhetoric. Yeah, we're not stuck here with you, anti-flat earthers. You're stuck here with us.
And I think that's why I feel bad for him. It's pathetic, I guess, in a way, when there's no self-awareness to even see the situation that they're in. Like, it's like seeing a little kid caught in a trap that was set for an adult. You know, it's just, it's heartbreaking for me.
You have a lot of empathy for them when you see this. I know. I get it. The Western world aren't enduring this same cognitive pain, though. It's only the wankers that we have to deal with that are enduring that cognitive pain you feel the empathy towards. So, when you consider who you have the empathy for, it's not the general Western world, is it? Let's be honest.
Oh no, they're in blissful ignorance, and may they remain that way if they wish. But these poor folks, they probably just seen something pop up on YouTube and thought they'd go and crush that real quick. And 5 years later, they're in this mess.
Right, they fell down. They didn't realise it at the time, but they fell down the same hill we fell down. It's just at the bottom they saw flames and hell, while there was lots of hippies dancing around, and they were annoyed with the hippies who didn't understand that they were at the bottom of a hill, and they should be realising that they should be scrambling back up to the top of the hill, so that they can enjoy blissful ignorance and glowed belief at the top of the hill with all the rest of the normies. Well, now, like you say, 5 years later, they realise, no, you're at the bottom of the hill with these hippies, whether you like it or not. It's just they're happy about it and you're not.
I have a question. Did we get to John's circular kitchen?
I don't think he needed to. He had an example that was perfectly adequate, and he commended the opponent for providing him with an adequate exemplary point that he could utilise to prove that the flat earth was required. So his kitchen example wasn't necessary. But maybe I'm speaking for you on without... yeah, go ahead, John. Maybe you can answer it instead of me.
Fun, though.
I'm sorry, my phone's messing up on me. I didn't hear the question.
Can I ask you a question again, Neil?
I was wondering why you didn't get to how you made your kitchen into a sphere. Just to rub it in their face.
I'm going to have to drop and rejoin. I think my phone's messing up.
John did bring up that point, and he wanted to present it, but they moved on in the conversation. I wouldn't present it. I don't know how it worked out, but he did bring that up.
So he didn't get a chance to compare and contrast how you can use the same methodology used by Roofy to prove a flat plane with the elevation angle measurements and do the exact same methodology in his kitchen with some lights on the roof. He wasn't allowed to do that. I see. Obviously, you've got to remain neutral, i.e. the outcome is neutral at worst for them.
Well, I told them that they could go to my channel, the Refractory Curvature channel, and watch those two videos. And they commented that they had watched those videos, but they never explained how I was wrong. You know what I mean? They said, that proves it's a sphere. I said, no, my kitchen is not a sphere.
How long were those videos?
It was.
How long are they? Just approximately.
They're less than 2 minutes.
Because it seems to me like you did speak about the Rob Durham clip, and you had a couple of videos that could have been played, but there was just the Roofy video, 20-odd minutes long, played, and none of your videos got played, correct?
Well, yeah, but they were firing so many fallacies at me that I was addressing them. I only got two hands, and I'm working off of a phone, so
Well, no, that's not your responsibility.
I'm not able.
The show host would obviously ultimately be responsible for presenting this information.
Yeah, but remember, it's a neutral outcome platform.
Of course, on a neutral outcome platform, you don't get to present contrasting evidence that absolutely annihilates them if it's presented in video format concisely to their audience without interruption. It's only you verbally, so it can be verbally interrupted at any opportunity after a 20-minute presentation that's completely uninterrupted and unchallengeable during the presentation. I see. Perfectly reasonable on a neutral outcome platform. I like that, Adam.
I do feel bad for him though, because that he was given a fairly big channel anyway, and to have people agreeing with me about the Eratosthenes, that can't be easy cognitively if you think it's behind you. Like I said, I feel bad for these guys.
No, they're going to have a lot of sleepless nights, and us discussing how their sleepless nights occur, and having a useful reference like Conspiracy Cat's interview with Haunted House about exactly how that cognitively processes, the awful truth of how you might have been lied to in other areas, if you even contemplate the idea that Earth might be foisted upon you in a deceptive manner, all of those things. Like I say, it's nice to have a reference with Conspiracy Cats being hit. Check out that video on Haunted House's channel for the awful truth that you'd have to contemplate if you considered the idea and notion of the flat Earth elevation angle measurements that you used if you were Roofy in this debate yesterday.
I've got the cognitive bomb that he's using. He sent me a message this morning. I've got it. I'll read it. Apparently, 10th Man was in the YouTube chat. Please let him know he's welcome to have a shot as well. Here's the bomb. Hopefully, he can get past step 1. So that's obviously what they're telling themselves, John. That it was you that couldn't get past step 1, not that realistically their methodology can't get back past step 1 on a ball, but it's done on a flat plane. So that seems
what's step 1?
Well, I don't know, but apparently that's what John couldn't get past. Did you see what I mean?
We're talking about navigation, aren't we? We all know. We've been discussing this for a considerable period of time. So you're out at sea. You haven't got your way, but you've been prepared. You got yourself an excellent chronometer, aka something to keep time. You got yourself an almanac, and you've got yourself your training in use of a sextant, right? But you lost. So you need to find out where the hell you are. What's step 1?
Well, this is why I say it's a game projection, isn't it? Because to me, it's obtain an elevation angle.
That requires a flat Earth.
Yeah.
So he said you can't get past step 1. Who said it was projection? No, globe-believing fundy muppets. You can't get past the elevation angle measurement from a flat plane. That's step 1.
John, did Roofy understand that when you were talking about the Eratosthenes demonstration, that the vertex of the angle, which is where the shadow meets the ground, the end of the shadow, that the distance from that to the GP point is the horizontal. That's the horizontal distance. The distance is not from the shadow to the obelisk. It's from the shadow to the GP point. He didn't seem to understand that. He kept on claiming, he kept on missing the point, or hiding the point that the distances being measured were horizontal distances, not curved distances. He kept on avoiding that. He didn't go in around it. He didn't even try and allude to it, to whether the distance was curved or horizontal. He just avoided it because he knows it's horizontal distances that are being measured. If you listen to what he has to say about circles of equal altitude, it's unbelievable.
Because
he just speaks about a central point where you can take a line straight out to the circumference. He doesn't even say the word radius or anything else. He just take a line out to the circumference of the circle, and let's just say the line is 1,000 miles or whatever in length, and that
all the he just after that, he just states all the coordinates work out. That's what he has to say.
I see. That was your point from 6 months ago. So hold on a second. That's a line along a flat surface. From the central point of a circle to the outside edge, that's the radius. Well, that's a straight flat line. Well, if you're going to assert that the Earth's curving away from you, that would have to be a bent line curving away 8 inches per mile squared. And it isn't, according to his description. And are you saying he just gave you the distance along a flat plane with a straight line radial value to give him it, and just whistle past it without even giving it an acknowledgement? Yeah, that sounds about right.
He's literally claiming a curved distance. He's claiming a curved line there. He actually is claiming a curved line.
Then it isn't a radius. Then it isn't a radius from a central point to the outside edge of a circle, is it?
No, but
no. So that's the problem.
Yeah.
So hold on.
So
So the conclusion at that point, Brian, is that his arguments with celestial navigation and its methodology of acquiring that radius by way of a flat plane depicted on a map that's flat with a circle. Well, that distance, that's a straight line. That's not curving. But his argument seems to be that, no, that argument that you have with celestial navigation about its use of flat baselines, I say they're not. No, they ipso facto are, Roofy. But you seem to be on your own, alone, in your description of a straight line that gives you a radius to the centre of a circle from the outside edge as being curved. Oh no, you just don't understand geometry. John was right. You're thick.
Yeah, he kept equivocating between topography and geometry. He kept on going. Every time John would talk about geometry, Rufus would start speaking about mountains. Every time.
We call him on that several times.
It's two fields that are easily mixed up, right? It's a universal problem. Reification of topography with a geometry or Euclidean space, right? It remains a difficulty for most people.
It's literally the example they give you in the definition of a reification fallacy. The map is not the terrain. We all took it out on this subject, because I think John's got a bit too much screaming to maybe give us any concise answers on this. I'm going to take that as a yes. So with that, I'm going to say another huge, massive, enormous thank you to both Discord and G+ panels for making today's after show possible. And of course, a massive thank you to all of you in either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley Programming streams. Hopefully smashing the super chat, liking, commenting, sharing, subscribing, joining as a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.